We're going live.
And that could have been you and I back then.
Yeah.
What, you being the biochar? Being roasted by savages?
Yeah.
That could have been too.
Goddamn savages, the lot of.
And the savages are back embodied. Here we are.
Yes. We are bringing the savage info today, guys. We're live with the great Steve Falconer for round 2. I'm going to hit record and get this bad boy fired up. Let me just turn off some stuff here real quick.
Let me know when you're doing the intro
you,
too. Yeah, tell me when you're doing the intro about me so I don't cut you off.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to say actually one thing before I do hit record, because I know a lot of people are asking. Unfortunate news, we had to pull Archaics from Music in Sky yesterday. I gave Jason a direct call first and foremost about it. This being a large, multifaceted family event, we were basically under the gun, getting a lot. We were getting threats. We were getting all sorts of, just a lot coming around Jason being there, to the point where doing an event of this size and magnitude with this many personalities and not even the personalities, but just the fact that it's just big of an event with hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, to have essentially that being risked by literally getting threats that the local press would be contacted, the venue was going to be contacted, and the venue would not understand this. So I explained this to Jason. I invited him to come back at a future time. He's working on getting his record expunged, and also so there won't be any history of a record anymore. And if we were doing this as an Alfa Vedic event on the farm, we wouldn't care. I don't care about these threats, but we couldn't risk losing the venue. So it was a pragmatic decision, had nothing to do with his content or who Jason is. We love him to death. I invited him to come back on AlphaCast. The whole point of Music in Sky is to have in-person discussions about these different ideas and cosmologies, to do it in person, get out of the internet drama. Bear and I don't live in the internet drama. We don't care about the internet drama. We have on today Steve, who doesn't agree with Jason on many points, and that's cool. That's the whole point of having discussion, right? And not being in our little cliques. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's why Jason will not be with us. We wish him all the best. He's crushing. I talked to him yesterday. He's thriving. He's got a meetup in a couple days out in Florida. So he's going to be good. We're going to be good. We're moving on. All is good. So, okay, I'm going to hit record and fire this bad boy up. Here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the Sage of Cool, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme. Here we went from winter to summer. No spring allowed. Welcome to the new reality. Literally from snow on Sunday to 90 degrees starting tomorrow. So that's what we're dealing with. It's the sort of how things roll these days. But it is what it is. I'll take the heat, Bear. I know you will. You'll probably be in the river soon. And we're just stoked to be out there gardening and getting everything kicking on the farm.
Yeah, the weather modifiers have been busy, but we've got a lot of catch up to do. So we've got literally flatbeds full of stuff to plant, and but things are coming up. Even with the weird weather, stuff is sprouting, and happy to be alive here. We've noticed since we've been on the farm and developed this, that the pollinators, the wildlife, I mean, we're in the middle of the wilderness, but it's even more abundant right centered where we are. So it just shows you what happens when you bring in mana into an area with good intentions. We're co-creators. That's our job here. So we're here doing what we're supposed to do, actually improving what nature has provided for us to improve in the first place. And Mike, just to riff off a little bit about what you said, we're talking about an individual, and there's a lot of drama around that individual. Well, I know that individual, and he's a stellar guy. Do I agree with him on everything he brings forth? Do I agree with anybody 100% with what they talk about on this, or in my personal life? The point is we are all individualizations with a unique perspective, And it is our job to create a mosaic from our own experience and then contribute that into the unified energy field, because why else would the creator individualize into all of us in the first place? So we could all be the same, have the same ideas, all agree with each other. So what our channel is about is presenting a diversity of guests and opinions and acting like the grown-ups in the room that we're supposed to be. You know, if you want to have drama, then go watch the news, go watch somebody that's going down the rabbit holes of, you know, it's the Rothschilds, it's, you know, coming to simplistic things, or the Don is going to save us, and, you know, let's hurry up and get somebody elected. You know, no, we want to surpass that and transcend all the horse shit and, you know, make up our own minds. We are about free speech and free enterprise here. And that's it. And for those of you that fall to the gossip or to think that somehow you have a little in on the secrets of the universe better than the rest of us, well, I'll be the first one to admit myself, I don't know a darn thing. That's why I preoccupy myself with doing things so I can create my own experience and then, you know, make some opinions based on how I'm doing as far as what kind of thoughts and emotions and ideas I'm putting out in the universe. So, you know, we farm, we make things, we invent things. You know, that's what we're all supposed to be doing. So if any of you out there find yourself maybe spending a little bit too much time on the internet, you know, maybe if you're watching more than one podcast a day, maybe it's an indication that you're not living life to the fullest. And, you know, if you're doing 3 or more podcasts a day, then maybe you need to seek help. So, you know, let's kind of move on. Let's be adults and put out love. You know, that's what we're supposed to do. And we're gossiping, and heaven forbid if your gossip isn't even true and you're putting little karmic daggers into other people, well, guess what? They're coming right back to yourself. So that's just the law of physics. So let's grow up and change the world into what we want it to be rather than what everybody else is doing out there to create a bunch of crap. And, you know, I do this because I meet a lot of interesting people. That I, you know, make lasting friendships with, people that I know and love and I respect. And I learn a lot just sitting here doing these podcasts. And that brings us to our guest today, Mr. Steve Falconer, somebody who I'm especially fond of and respect greatly for his contribution to the overall knowledge bank. Thank you for being here, Stephen. And we're going to pass it over to Mike. He's going to give you a formal introduction, and then we'll get to it.
You're here. Couldn't have said it better. The Sage of Cool, laying it down.
By the way, today's episode is brought to you by Raw Optics. All proceeds will go to my second house in Maui. And these are really cool. Go out and buy some.
Yeah, we have a link always in the show notes below. And we're in a band. It's called the Blue Blockers. And we'll be touring at all your local malls starting in the fall. Wherever there's blue light, we'll be there blocking it from our eyeballs. Yeah, today we're with the great Steve Falconer. While geopolitical events deepen, the collective hypnosis with flashbang theater and diversionary breadcrumbs, a breathtaking vista, is now coming into the view of many. AlphaCast has always shied from the red herring news cycles, both alternative and conventional, because if it doesn't grow corn in the world we envision, what's the point? Rabbit holes of misdirection and the misguided hope for political solution are there for one reason alone: deferred self-responsibility. We entertain guests from many experiential perspectives to promote adult discourse that transcends the confines of intellectual or spiritual beliefs founded on varying scriptural or historical interpretations. Steve Falconer rejoins us on this episode for a part 2 discussion of the origin of present-day societal constructs. This chat will further our appreciation for the complexity, symbology, and inversion of ancient truths used to usurp the life force of each and every embodied soul. Steve is a prolific political commentator and the voice of Spacebusters on YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, and Vigilante TV. He is also the author of the children's book, The Dukes of Dents, available on all Amazon platforms, and a former writer and administrator for Truth Serum News. Steve, I'll have you show that once we go over to you, because I'd love you to show that book again to the audience, where he wrote under the pen name, Are You Sure? He is a former Chicago native living in Copenhagen, Denmark, a music teacher and full-time touring musician. He is a father and researcher into all things hidden, esoteric, and out of the ordinary daily experience, with a gift for debunking or demystifying occulted information. Expect Steve's depth of knowledge and knack for sleuthing to be on a full display today as he connects a myriad of historic dots between a diversity of players comprising the Swiss Nazi Templars, the Jesuits, and Black Nobility, and a host of other secretive sects to paint a revealing mosaic from ancient times to the current globalist agenda. I've got the papers. Go ahead, Bear.
Steve, really fun to have you back on. And after our last episode, I couldn't wait to get you back on because I wanted to do part 2 and find out who are those guys. So I'm going to let you take it away and tell us all about the people working in the shadows.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back with you guys. Yeah, these are blue light blockers for people wondering why we look like a bunch of punks, and we're waiting for Robbie Williams to join the band, and then we're going to get back together for a greatest hits tour. So we ran out of kind of time last time. We were sort of the last discussion was about the mythology going around in the truth community, or in most communities, that it's the small hat people, as we have to say on YouTube, that are running the world. And we did a lot of debunking on that. And we started to get into Switzerland. I'd like to get back into ancient Ireland again today, but I have a feeling this could run a little long. So if not, we can then go back, like you said, with a group with Michael Tessarian, and maybe get some people like Bob Quinn, Anthony Woods. There are some other great Irish researchers that have been passed to me recently. So maybe we could do that. But yeah, so I think we'll just pick up where we left off, which was, Mike, you do the best Alex Jones. You got to do we've got the documents.
It's the gay frogs.
There are. Okay, I'm supposed to be sharing screen. Hold on a second. That didn't work. So share screen. Here we go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, here we go. Got it. And then I have to click this. You'd think for a filmmaker I'd be tech. Can you see that?
Yeah, you're good,
Yep.
man.
Big screen. Yeah, right. Okay. So this is kind of where we left off last time. I can move this to, I figured out I can just move everything around. A lot of the information I'm going to present today comes from different sources. So like Bear said, I'm not saying all of this is truth. Some of the stuff I'm going to present is actually a little conflicting in information. And then it's up to you to, kind of dig deeper yourself, or think what you want to think. Some of this comes from a great guy called Sean Ross, HROSS, who has a channel called Chatsafrats down here in the bottom right corner. He and I have different, opinions on where this really comes from, but a lot of this information is incredible. So what you're looking at, what we got into last time, is you always hear about the Jesuits, right? It's the Jesuits or the Vatican or the Black Nobility or this, that, and the other. But you never hear about Switzerland, which is a huge, huge part of the puzzle. And there's a misconception that the Knights Templar that came and founded Switzerland are the same Knights Templar today that are part of the controlling faction of the world. And that's not true. The Knights Templar were opposed to everything going on right now, and they were infiltrated and shut down, and they ended up morphing, as we'll get into in a bit later, into what's called the Knights of Malta, or the Sovereign Order of the Military Knights of Malta, the Knights Hospitaller, and the Knights of St. John. But you start to see, I'll see if I can, I think I have a slideshow here. You start to see these logos everywhere. We see them everywhere, either this red cross or a white cross in red. You see this red and white theme. It's on the City of London guilds. It's on the Vatican militia. It's on the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, or the SMOM. It's on the Jesuits logo, and you also see the Templar cross at the top of the IHS here, if you can see my mouse. So let me see how I can do this. I think the slide should, all right. Yeah, we got into this guy last time.
This show brought to you by gender fluid frogs.
Yeah, exactly. What I was trying to show you guys.
The fight against the New World Order.
Right. Yeah. The New World Order. It's a bunch of gay reptilian lesbians from the planet, whatever. He used to fly the Swiss Templar logo up here, top on the right, you can see. And then he got called out on it, and people started to, notice this, and then he changed it. So I'm not saying he's an agent, but I'm saying you have to watch out. Now, the theme of what we talked about last time was a lot of people think the Jews are running the world, that it's a Jewish conspiracy to take over the world. And I'm not denying there are a lot of Jews in power. So one of the things we hear is that Vanguard and BlackRock, money rules the world, right? They control the world. So who controls them? That's where we left off last time. Well, Vanguard here, I'll see if I can throw you guys up in the top corner here. There we go. It was started by John C. Bogle, a Princeton Ivy League guy, Villanova University, which is private Catholic Jesuit university. He was a Protestant, not a Jew. And then it was run by John Jack Brennan, Dartmouth College, Ivy League, Christian theology school major, devout Roman Catholic, not a Jew. William F. McNabb III, Columbia Law School, Ivy League, Wharton U of Pennsylvania, Ivy League, not a Jew. And the current CEO is Mortimer J. Buckley, Harvard, Ivy League, named after the minister, John Harvard, a devout Irish Roman Catholic. So if Vanguard runs the world, you'd think they might have a tiny hat person starting it and running it, you'd think, but they don't.
And we want to be clear here. We're often talking about Khazarians, right? When we're talking about tiny hats.
Well, that's another myth we're going to debunk when we get into the czars, Khazarians, Tsars, Caesars, Russian czars, Kaisars. Yeah. That's another one of these myths, like the Rothschild. He's a backstreet moneylender in a small town in Germany, and him and his 12 poker buddies get together on a Tuesday night and come up with a plan to take over the world, even though they don't have any money to do it.
Journey song.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, just so you know, the only ethnic group you're not allowed to talk about on AlphaCast is the Italians.
We're going to talk about the Italians, unfortunately.
The Italians?
I love Italians.
I hate it when people say Italian.
They have the best food ever, though. So BlackRock.
Give us that at least.
I love Italians, yeah. They are involved in this, as are the Spanish, as are the Swiss, as are the Portuguese, and we'll get it. I am going to name names today, by the way. So some of this is, a little dangerous where I live, and I'll explain why later. Well, so BlackRock, that comes out of the Black Waters, Switzerland. Remember, there used to be I think they might be G4S security now. There used to be Blackwater and BlackRock. Remember the security groups? They were like a militia. It was started by 3 Jews, but the guy running it is Philip Hildebrand here. He's a Swiss banker, and he served as vice chairman since 2012. He was the head of the Swiss Central Bank, Swiss National Bank. So again, it's being run by a Swiss, and we have to ask why. Now, what we're going to get into a little bit, we're going to get back into the old Crusaders and the Crusades and the Knights Templar, the original. They are different from the modern infiltrated Crusaders, as is Freemasonry. But Switzerland was founded on August 1st, 1291, at the end of the Crusades, and it was founded by a returning Knights Templar who were working for the Vatican and to go to the Holy Land for holy wars. But they were looting and robbing, but they weren't just doing that. They were learning esoteric knowledge. Part of the treasure they brought back was Hermeticism and alchemy. And it had been destroyed in Europe since about maybe 400 AD by the Roman Catholic Church, Church of England, and later the Church of Ireland. August 1st is still Switzerland's national holiday. So they have that's like their 4th of July. And that is the day the Templars founded Switzerland. And we'll get into what that means. So I think I have to take these off because I can't see my highlights. Hold on. I've got 25, 30% blue blockers. So the Knights Templar were a military order of the Catholic faith. Now it's always funny because every time you see these knights for the Catholic Church, whether it's the Hospitaller, St. John's, Knights of Malta, they're all military orders. And you're like, I thought this is a church based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. And yet they're all military order. They were founded 1119. They were headquartered in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and officially endorsed by the Roman Catholic Church by such decrees as the Papal Bull by Pope Innocent II. The Templar Knights, in their distinctive white mantles, had a red cross. That's where we start to see this logo everywhere. And they were among the most skilled fighting units. They were prominent in Christian finance. This is where our modern banking is perverted from. They really made the first banks, actually, and checks. So what they were doing, I think I might have this in the slide later. If you were a crusader and you went to there and you got all your treasure and gold, it was dangerous to bring all of it physically back on the road. You'd get robbed and looted. So they set up banks where they were guarded by Templars. You could drop your gold and your loot off, and then they would give you what we call checks today that you could cash at another Templar bank in Europe or wherever you were going, worth the value. Way different, we'll get into, than the Jewish usury system. There was no interest on this. It was just, you gave us this much gold, we say it's worth this, you can redeem this at any Templar bank. But they were, because the Christians could not charge usury, as we talked about last time. So most of the Templars were actually non-combatant. They were actually bankers, or 90% of them. And they managed the biggest infrastructure throughout Christendom, and they developed the financial techniques that are now banking. And they built a network of about 1,000 commanderies and fortifications, which were guarding the bank treasure across Europe and the Holy Land. And so really they formed one of the world's earliest multinational corporations. Now the Templar flag or shields was white with a red cross on it. And you can see, we've all heard about the empire of the three cities, right? You've got these three independent cities that are different from the countries they sit in. You've got the city of London, which is in London City, but it's not part of the city. And they fly the Templar flag with the Templar sword. I don't know if you can see on the right here. Okay. And they were closely tied to the Crusades. So this is where all the financial and banking starts to get perverted and corrupted later. The Templars did not start the City of London banking. This gets taken over later, as we'll get into. And I think I'll come back to the bottom of that later. Yeah. So who are these Templars? We need to understand what's going on. Most of the Templars were like the second, third, or fifth born royalty or nobility who had no claim or inheritance to their throne or family wealth. In those days, all the wealth went to the firstborn. You know, it's the first son of the king who's the king, and he gets everything, and the brothers get nothing, and neither do the sisters. So the deal was they would go off pillaging in the Middle East and Egypt for the Roman Catholic Church, and then they could keep all the loot. To the victor goes the spoils. But what was going on is, and Jason Brashears has talked about this a lot. Unfortunately, both the Roman Catholic Church and their appointed nobility families, as we talked about last time with Jordan Maxwell, all of the nobility of Europe are appointed by the Vatican or the Pope, right? They have the divine right to rule because God's appointees said they can. Well, what they were doing is when these guys were away for many years, they were stealing their land titles by telling their wives that they had died. And then they were forcing these wives to sign over the land titles or be thrown in a monastery. That's where you get your nuns to this day, or have to remarry if they were beautiful into another nobility. And then either way, they have to sign the land over either to the Vatican or to one of their appointed nobility. So this is what really created all this hate and distrust between the original returning Templars and the Roman Catholic Church and their appointed nobility families, because the Templar looting and banking network had it made massive power and wealth for these guys. They were way powerful after this. And that scared the ruling nobility because a lot of times the monarchs or appointed nobility were borrowing money from the Templars to finance wars against other monarchs at home in Europe. But they were simultaneously stealing the land and wives of the same people they were borrowing this money from. So they didn't like these people. And the Roman Catholic Church also feared them because while the Templars were away, a lot of the Crusaders were fighting for loot. They started gaining the old Irish Gnostic, Hermetic, alchemical wisdom and Irish Freemasonic down at the bottom. You see, I have that spelled Phre. That's an Irish word for the sun. Druidic knowledge that still remained in the East from thousands of years before the Crusades, despite being eradicated by the church in Europe 600 years earlier. So the Templars knew what biblical Christianity was really talking about in coded allegory. So they were a direct threat to the old world order of the Roman Catholic papacy ruler and its appointed divine vassal families over Europe. So these guys were very dangerous. So this is the bottom of this. So what ended up happening is rumors started going around about the Templars that there was a secret initiation ceremony, what they were doing for their initiates. And King Philip IV of France, he was deeply in debt to the Knights Templar while he was still stealing their land and property. So he used the distrust to take advantage of not having to pay back his debt. Now, France is very important. So in 1307, he pressured Pope Clement V. So you got to remember the Templars are working for the Vatican and the popes up until this point. To have many of the order's members in France arrested, tortured into giving false confessions, and then they burned them at the stake. This is the Friday the 13th story we've all heard with the Dan Brown stuff. Yep. And under further pressure, then Pope Clement V, his predecessor, what do you call it? What's the next guy? Concessor. I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He disbands the order in 1312. So that's the main story. Now, so what happens is in 1305, the Pope Clement V, the new one based in France again. Now, this is why the Jesuits end up doing a French Revolution against the royalty and French church. There's another reason as well. He sends letters to the Templar Grand Masters, Jacques de Molay and the Hospitaller Grand Master Fulk de Villars, to discuss merging the Hospitallers and Templars together, but they didn't want to do that. The Hospitallers at the time, they were setting up networks of medical hospitals for the Crusaders so they could get like medical treatment on the way to and from the Crusades, but they were still knights, and we'll get into what they are. And then while waiting, de Molay and Clement discussed criminal charges that had been made 2 years earlier by an ousted Templar, by King Philip, who owed them money, and his ministers. So while they were there, Philip, he was already in debt to them from his war against England that he borrowed from. He seized upon the rumors and he began pressuring the church to take action to free himself. So at dawn on Friday the 13th, this is where we get that lore about, Friday the 13th, 1307 of October, King Philip has them all rounded up and arrested and tried, and they end up burning them all at the stake. Now, the modern Templars aren't them, but if you remember in 2015, the Paris attacks, remember the terrorist attacks in Paris? They happened, of course, on Friday the 13th, November 2015, because they keep carrying on this tradition against the French because of this. They hate the French because of this, even though it's not modern Templar. And they had no evidence of these rituals. So what were they doing? This is where you guys are going to crush. I can point out about 5 right off the bat. So they were accused of idolatry and were charged with worshiping a figure known as Baphomet. Can you guys see Baphomet big enough on the left top of the screen? Or I'm not sure if I can blow that up. So, I mean, you guys, I would love to hear a little bit of your decode. The Christians will tell you that's satanic. That's the devil. The Baphomet is the devil. What do you guys see there as alchemists and knowing what you know? What is this Baphomet?
Well,
Aaron?
that could be a lengthy discussion, but it could be viewed as the sacred marriage.
Yeah, like quick, he's got his hands up as above, so below. Well, this
Right.
is Hermeticism and alchemy. He's got a five-pointed pentagram up, not upside down, on his forehead, which are the four elements in the ether, right? Or the five body centers. He's got Aries, the ram or lamb of God. He's got a goat head, which, as we talked about before, Bear, when you take the zodiac and the body wrapped around the stars, Aries is
Exactly.
the head, the ram or lamb of God.
But the caduceus, which of course is the symbolism of the duality and the rising out of the human nature up to the crown. Yeah, he's got the of course, yeah, the goat thing, of course, that's somehow attributed to like satanic worship of I guess sacrificing goats and just totally missing the allegoric perception here. And then of course you have the breasts of the female bosom, of course, of creation, and you have the, of course, as Bear was, talking about the alchemical marriage here, the wings, of course, as the sort of once again the angelic rising out of the earthly humanness from the clay. You have the moon and the two moons there, huh? You have the one on his right
Yeah,
shoulder. Mm-hmm.
right. And the
And
caduceus also have the
and
two nerve
I
centers,
think we have
right?
to remember
Yep.
that all of the what we would consider the sinister force or satanic, worship cults, they are not creative. All they can do is borrow ancient truths and then invert them for their own use. So, yeah, we kind of jump to these simplistic notions that everything is about Satan or evil. And well, there's people out there that do that stuff. Just like the Masons, I think you're going to talk a little bit more about the original Masons versus the Masons that were infiltrated later on. All the same stuff. So rather than throwing out the baby with the bathwater, let's just get a little bit of understanding as far as where this stuff originated in the first place. We might learn something.
Yeah, that's right. And also, in the middle of his stomach, he's got the caduceus, which is the two nervous systems, the motor and the
Mm-hmm.
other nervous system. Then he's sitting in a meditative state. Do you notice he's sitting in a yogic meditation, the lotus stance? That's when you rise your kundalini, right? Through meditation. So he's sitting like that. He's got goat legs, which is Capricorn, the goat, the knees, the lower legs, right? And you can just go on and on with this symbol. Well, these people were burned at the stake for worshiping this. They weren't worshiping it. They brought this. This is just hermetic knowledge that they brought back. But anyway, so what ended up happening is Pope Clement, he relented to King Philip's demands and then issued the papal bull on 1307. So he instructed all the Christian monarchs in Europe to arrest all the Templars and seize their assets. But that's just the ones who were in Europe. A lot of them made it back to Switzerland. This is just a small group who got done. The rest of them made it back to Switzerland and put all their treasures in mountain vaults.
Also where they might have gone
Where?
to California.
Oh, they're
There's a
there. Yeah.
whole, yeah, Jay Widener's talked about this, how there's there's all this story of Tartaria and structures that precede San Francisco, their temples and places. And he's actually made an argument that that was the Templars escaping persecution. And they came across and they were some of the first to actually inhabit California. It's an interesting idea, and it does make a lot of sense.
I would say absolutely. The California Republic flag is Arcturus, the bear, looking at the North Star Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
King Arthur. Arcturus is Arthur the bear. So King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is the Big Dipper, the swastika going around Polaris, round and round and round and round with the constellation Arcturus. They absolutely were probably there. Absolutely. So anyway, so they burned these guys at the stake. And then Philip was threatening military action unless the Pope commanded. So he disbanded the Templar order. So this is the end of the real Knights Templar. And if we get time to get into later, this is old Irish wisdom that they brought back. Hermeticism comes from Ireland. But he disbands it. And then what they did is at the Council of Vienna in 1312, he makes a papal bull where he dissolves the order. But then what he does is he turns over all the Templar assets to the Knights Hospitaller, the ones who had set up the hospitals. Now, this gets into like our birth certificate fraud. I've seen you guys have had some guests on very recently. You know, you're born in the hospital and you get this all caps name, right, under Universal Commercial Code, and they keep your placenta, and that's the second coming of Christ. And so you've left your infant abandoned at ship because the hospital kept the placenta. This is all going to come out of this as the maritime law. So these
And birth
hospitaller,
is spelled BERTH, not BIRTEH. It's all about birthing it, coming in from sea, birthing at port, and claiming your cargo. And we were never claimed.
correct. Yeah, you're a
So
vassal.
somebody
You're a
else did
ship
it.
lost at sea. Yeah, exactly. Nobody claimed the cargo, so the port authorities, when it's birthed, they put a lien on it and they want repayment for reclaiming it. Absolutely. And that comes out of this. So the Order of the Knights of the Hospitaller of Saint John of Jerusalem, they were known as the Knights Hospitaller. They were still a Catholic military order, and they were working in Malta too from the 1530s to 1798 and St. Petersburg, Russia. And they founded hospitals in Jerusalem dedicated to John the Baptist, who we'll get into later is an allegory. It's an Irish allegory to care for the sick, poor, or injured Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. But you have to ask, how did a hospital network become a military order? Because you can see on the right, their allegiance is to the Pope. They're a Catholic military order, and their flag is the Danish flag and almost the Swiss flag, right? And they're like a military religious order. And then after the reconquest of the Holy Land by the Islamics take back the Holy Land, the Islam people, the Knights then operated from Rhodes, so they were sovereign. So they turn into the Knights of Malta, the military order of the Knights of Malta, right? Or the Knights of Malta, as they're normally called. But they're still a vassal state under the Spanish Viceroy of Sicily. So when I'm talking about modern Templars, I'm not talking about the ones who were burned at the stake. I'm talking about the Knights of St. John, the Knights Hospitaller, and the Knights of Malta, who have also, we'll get into later, have now been controlled by the Jesuits since about 1814, but we'll get into that, right? So there's a lot of people out there saying it's the Knights Templar, it's the Knights Templar. There's a difference between the Knights Templar and the modern Knights Templar. The
Some
modern
would
Knights
say
Templar
that
are these guys.
some would say that the Knights Templar were just a continuation of the tradition of this perennial philosophy that basically turned into the Rosicrucians that came out of, I mean, basically, as you were saying, it's all the Hermetic Masonic tradition that they were not allowed to follow because that is the core truth. That's just not allowed to be.
Yeah, Mike. See, the Rosicrucians, so this will get us into Freemasonry later. Irish Freemasonry is spelled Phre, which is an Irish name for the sun. So a Freemason Irish was a Phre Mason. He was a person who followed the sun and the Hermetic teachings and the spirit manifest into man and returning back to spirit. That went into Rosicrucians and some of the real Masonic lodges that still carry on to get today. Scottish Rite Freemasonry and all this Roman Catholic Jesuit shit Freemasonry that comes out in the 1800s in London. This is totally perverted. I don't think we're gonna have time to get into it, but they infiltrated Freemasonry and started changing the teachings around. And I don't think we have to go deeply into it. But anyway, so then these knights, they start in the 1500s. They become divided during the Protestant Reformation. And so they start kind of getting split up, and then they get suppressed in England, Denmark, and other parts of Northern Europe, which is weird because both those countries are flying their flag, right? But several organizations continue today under the hospital, like the Knights of Malta out of Switzerland. So the Knights of Malta are the modern Templars running out of Switzerland, and then they have the Order of St. John in Sweden. And they have the same damn flags. I'll show you what their symbols are. Now, which two countries are always neutral in every war?
Good old Switzerland and
in
Well, it
Sweden.
used to be
That's
Costa Rica, but what's the other one?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Switzerland and Sweden and Europe are always neutral in every war. But that's because they're them. They have all their treasures. They make their weapons. They don't, pardon my French, they don't shit in their backyard or wheat in it, as the Swedish say. And I'm not going to talk about St. John's because they chased Ola Damagard out of here when he exposed the Honors Breivik, the Norway bombing, that false flag.
It is.
He had
Oh
go
yeah,
on.
yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah, I have to pass. I work in their country and I have to pass through to my island, so I'm not going to talk about them. But so
Well, I was going to say it is interesting this timing. I think we mentioned on the last show. This is right around the same time as the Unum Sanctum papal bull was initiated, right? Which was, basically that the Pope has control of every soul on and puts it in a trust. So it was right around this time that when they took out the Templars around 13, early 1300s.
just here, yeah, and also popes have been around. They claim since like 33 A.D. I think that's questionable, but at least the first century. You don't find kings until even in like Denmark and Norway, Harold the Bluetooth and these old ones, Viking kings, they don't really start coming into power or into existence until about the 400s, 500s, sometimes as late as the 18 and 1900s in some countries. But the kings are, and the royalty underneath them are the oligarchies. They're vassals. They're always appointed by the Roman Catholic Church as they're giving them the divine right to rule. But yeah, you're correct. This is when all this starts happening. So the sovereign military order of Malta is what's going on in Switzerland right now. Well, how is a Catholic order a military again? And they are also the Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Rhodes, and Malta. And this is really interesting. Though it possesses no territory, the order is often considered a sovereign entity under international law. So they have no country, but they're untouchable by any law in any country. What's going on with that, right? We have to ask. And until the 1990s, the highest classes of membership, including officers, required proof of noble lineage. So you can't just get into the Knights of Malta. You have to be a nobleman. You have to be of vassal appointed bloodlines. And strangely enough, their flag here on the right here's the Knights of Malta flag. And again, we have the Danish and Swiss Templar flag going on there. The Swiss one is enclosed, but it comes from that. Okay. So the Order of St. John is the other name for these guys who went up to Sweden. They were a navy. So they were the Navy Order of St. John, known as the Maltese Navy after 1530, and they were the first navy of a chivalric order, established in the Middle Ages. Again, Mike, like you're saying, the same time, 12th century. Now, this is where all of our admiralty maritime law we are under today, right? The Roman Catholic military law, which is actually like a Talmudic law. Actually, I would argue Universal Commercial Code is Talmudic law. But this is where we're getting all this, like, what people are like, why are we under admiralty maritime law, right? Why would we be under that on the land? It's because it's coming out of this transition where we had these papal orders of naval knights. All right, and here we have them. These are your Knights of Malta. That's their cross and emblem. Now you can see
some strapping young bucks there.
punch. Look at all the black guys. Look at all the women and blacks and Muslims, and look at all the Jews. I don't see them, right? So there's a black one, Nelson Mandela. He ends apartheid by working for the white men behind apartheid. Okay.
Hope that's not a Mandela effect, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, he was working for them as well. So this is the thing, he's branded as a national hero. Well, yeah, he ends apartheid, but what ends up happening if you've ever visited South Africa, apartheid's still going on there. It's just legal now. There's nothing different. It's still the same. Oh, there we
Oh
got.
man, Joel Schaefer was just down there. I was listening to a stream. He was in South Africa and he was talking about the shanty towns, just how like it's not changed at all. Like these people live in absolute squalor. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, ridiculous. Yeah, tin shacks and totally broken. They will rob you, if your car breaks down on the way from Jayburg to Cape Town, like you're in big trouble. Here we have a Dame of Malta, Queen Lizard Breath, Elizabeth. She's rest in peace or hell, right? What's she wearing on her regala? What is that? That's the Maltese cross.
Mhm.
We did this slide last time, right? The Rothschilds, they're wearing the same thing. Now we'll get into what this symbol is. So, what is this symbol? Like this, what is this thing? Because they're always wearing it all the time. And it comes from this. It's called Octagon. So this what I'm calling the modern Swiss Templar, or we could call the Knights of Malta, or the Knights Hospitaller, or the Knights of St. John. On the left here, we're looking at a pyramid from the top view, right? If you look down at a pyramid,
Mm-mm.
can you see the four sides? Imagine that in 3D.
Yep.
If you cut these with scissors and opened it up and unfolded it, you'd get this. See what happens? And when you trace that with an outline, you get octagon, you get 8. That's why their secret society in Switzerland is called Octagon, because the Templars brought this knowledge back from Egypt where they were looting. Guess who? Look at it. Look at the stop signs in America. Red and white with an octagon around it, right? Telling you to obey, you better stop. Well, who do you think's in charge of America, really? Who put those stop signs up everywhere? Well, I'd suggest these guys did. So then I wonder if I can move this to, can I move that? Yes, I can. Brilliant. So let's take a look at Switzerland, because they never get talked about. This is the one thing when you hear about Jesuits, Knights of Malta, even the Jews or whoever, no one mentions Switzerland. But who's there? World Economic Forum. Coloni, the Colonia family, one of the black nobility families. Davos, where all the world leaders get together to screw us. Bank for International Settlements in Basel. So forget the Federal Reserve in Dubai and the City of London. All the money ends up back there in Switzerland at the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. Screw the Federal Reserve. They're just a trading post on the way. United Nations is in New York, but the whole main headquarters are in Geneva. And inside the United Nations building, they have another like 50 that I couldn't list here, smaller weird organizations. World Trade Organization is there. World Health Organization, International Bureau of Education, International Trade Center, the Red Cross, which is a Templar spy organization or an NGO out of Geneva. There's over 65 major pharmaceutical headquarters in Switzerland. CERN, the Hadron Particle Collider. I saw you just had Angel APV on the other APV, right? Yeah. So they have a CERN there. They have the International Olympic Committee, which we'll get into. I'll show you, Mike, because you were asking about the Scythians.
Yeah.
And I think I might have found out who they were, and it has to do with the Olympics, actually. So I'll get into that later.
Interesting.
And
FIFA's, yeah.
what can you tell us about the symbol of the Olympics, the 5 rings?
I haven't really looked into it. I'm sure the symbolism is where they overlap, but I've never looked into it. Can you tell me something
It's
about
the five, it's the
No.
5 genders.
No, I was just curious.
the 5 genders? Everyone knows there's 70 genders, silly.
I'm sticking to 5, and that's my story.
Get up to speed, Mike.
But then, yeah, you've got FIFA, which runs all the football, which is rigged. It's all totally fixed. UEFA, you've got Gavi, the Bill Gates's, vaccine alliance thing. The World Council of Churches. This is very important because the Jesuits, they want to reunite Protestants or get rid of them, or they're trying to reunite the Protestant and Catholic churches together under Francis, the Jesuit Pope. And why is the World Council of Churches out of Switzerland instead of the Vatican? International Internet of Things Forum. Oh, my dear. Internet Governance Forum. Did you know there was such a thing? World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the WBCSD. International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, ILGA. And then the
Those-
Swiss Guard for the Vatican and the Vatican treasure. So the Swiss guards guard the Vatican, not Roman guards, and the Vatican treasures in Switzerland. So we have to ask, what is all this stuff doing there, right? Like, did you know all this stuff was in there? Mike, you and I were talking offline. We need to talk about this guy.
Tiny
And
stash.
yeah, you were saying, what was it, Europa, the final battle, or
Yeah, I was sharing that again with the private community platform because some people were talking about it, and it's an interesting film. It's like 12 hours long. And actually a friend of ours shared that, Steve, if you remember, in a private Telegram group who's investigating that. And it's got like, it's just full of half truths, you know. And we were laughing about, because it goes into the whole story of the Rothschilds again, and Meyer Rothschild, and how he's just like this back alley money changer who it's like this coming of age story, and he gets together with, like you said, with some poker buddies, and they learn how to like basically control the whole world. I mean, it's pretty comical.
Yeah, and he's loaning money to princes and mercenaries, and he's, it's like, where did you get the cat? Like, there's money lenders on Edgware Road in London. They're a dime a dozen. They don't have that kind of cash. And like you said, it is this false kind of dichotomy. It's either you're either with the Nazis or the Jews.
Well, this is the thing, like we always saw in our Telegram forever. It was really heated, like during like 2019 to 2022. We'd always get these, people coming in, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, and then dropping all of this hardcore stuff in our channel. And it's like, and then and then you have the counter to that. It's like either you have to go with like full pro Nazi or and like or you go the other side, and right. And it's just like a false dialectic it's like an egregore, if you will, that is feeding, that people feed into, right? And it's black magic.
Never go full Nazi. Yeah, you're right. But and that's, I mean, that's the reason I've been having these talks with you guys in Anarchapulco. I'm doing this because of these stories about the Jews run the world, or Hitler was a great guy. Like it's just like, people, come on, man, there's something else going on. It's how they always run the dialectic. They let you talk about A or B, but don't give you C through Z. So that's what we're going to do for the next whatever minutes this takes, is we're going to get into this guy.
Yeah, like
Jesuit.
the greatest story never told. I know, Bear, you shared that with me a while ago, and it's, it is, I mean, you watch that, and it's a huge puff piece for Hitler, and it makes a lot of sense, right? But then you're just like, I don't know. It's like you got to really put away a lot of historical facts that no matter what, I know history is always being manipulated and changed, but there was a war. Like both my grandfathers were in it. Like there was a lot of death and destruction. So I personally don't think war is good, no matter what you're trying to do. And so those who just all puff him up as this great, great man that didn't kill a Jew. And then there's others that, it's just there, as we're going to show right here, reality is not that black and white.
Yes, man. And because we're on YouTube, I can't get into the Holocaust stuff, but we're going to get around it, but I can't get into it. Anyway, so he's Jesuit Knights of Malta, modern Swiss Catholic temper controlled. I call him Adolf Swissler.
Great.
And do you see what he's wearing right next to his Nazi logo? What's that? That's the Knights Templar cross. He's wearing the Templar regalia, the Swiss Templar regalia, right there in the circle. All right, so let's talk about this guy and who the Nazis were. I have to move you guys out of my way so I can read this. Here we go. All right, so before we get into Hitler, we have to do a little bit of back history. I'm just going to go back a little bit, a couple hundred years in history to get the backstory. What happened is Germany became a Protestant nation in the 16th century after the Reformation. And so the reason the Jesuits, one of the reasons they say the Jesuits were formed, and again, all history is total lies. So I'm just giving you what's available to me. I'm not sure there weren't ulterior motives for the Jesuits, and I am gonna present one of those later that is contrary to this. But the job of the Jesuits supposedly and Jesuit infiltrated modern Swiss Templars or Knights of Malta or Hospitaller St. John, was to destroy the nations if they would not convert back to Roman Catholicism by any means, including infiltration and royal appointments into the royal houses, or just inciting flat out religious civil wars. So what happened in France is the French Protestant Huguenots, they were Protestants. They fled to Germany, and they were also not only were Protestants, they were Hermeticists. They were Hermeticists. They were carrying the old wisdom. They fled to Germany after the Catholics killed 2 to 4 million of the Protestants in what was called the French Wars of Religion from 1562 to 1598. I never learned about this in school. As an American, they didn't teach us much of this. But this was like one of the most deadly wars at that time. So the Jesuit controlled modern Swiss Templar, or again, call it Malta. When I say Swiss Templar, I'm talking about what we've been talking about. They found them in Germany and they murdered, the estimates are between 6 million and 20 million of them, the French Huguenots, in what was called the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648. And that was the Swiss who did it. It was the Swiss who fought that war against the Germans. So you're like, why is everyone fighting Germany all the time? Now, as we talked about earlier, the popes have been around since the 1st century, allegedly, but they don't start installing the monarchs and kings until the 500s to 800s, and then even the 18 and 1900s. But yet, even though these monarchs are always at war with each other, they're always wearing this exact same regalia. When you see oil paintings of them, you can see on the bottom right here, there's the Templar cross, the Maltese cross, Templar cross. This one's got an octagon with a Templar cross, and this guy has the Jesuit 32 beam sun logo with an octagon inside of it. It doesn't matter. Like if they're in Russia, it doesn't matter where they're at. All the kings
Who are those guys? You got Napoleon, you got Louis the Ninth.
Oh yeah, I can go back one. Hold on. I don't know how to do that. Hold on. Maybe this. There. Yeah, sorry, I can move this. I've got I've cut the top people. Yeah, Louis the Ninth, Francis the First, Henry the Fourth, Louis the 14th, and then the bottom is Louis the 16th, Napoleon. I'm not even totally convinced Napoleon's a real guy, but we won't get into that.
I'm curious, did any of the Russian monarchs or did they have that on them as well?
Well, let's have a look. You're always psychic with me, Mike. Every time you ask a question, it's the next slide. Let's have a look. Well, as a matter of fact, yes, they do. So at the time of World War I, so Hitler's World War II, the King of Britain, Russia, and Germany were all first cousins. And when asked about World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany sarcastically remarked, "If my grandmother, Queen Victoria, had been alive, she would have never allowed it."
Yeah.
So here you have, now look look, are these guys not like twin brothers?
Yeah.
These are and I've written in the middle, Mike, you get to crack your joke. The Caesars, the Tsars, the Kaisers.
Yeah, the
right?
Caesars CV2s.
Yeah, you called it the Caesars CoV2, which is so you can see they all look like each other. These dudes look like 3 twin brothers. They're all first cousins having world wars against each other. And what are they all wearing? Well, oh crap. That went wrong. Hold on. Let me get to that slide. What did I do? There. So here he is. He's got there's the Templar Knights of Malta cross. And he's got another one here on the left. I'm pointing at those red circles. This guy's got them both on the right. I'm not sure. They look so close. I'm not sure which one is Russian and which is English. I've got some more pictures, though. So here's King Victor Emmanuel III. He was the king of Italy from 1900 to 1946. So he made it through 2 world wars. Look at what he's wearing. He's wearing all these Knights of Malta crosses. He's wearing Swiss Templar octagons, all the 8-sided ones with crosses, Malta crosses in them, right? And these guys are all on different sides of these wars. Depending on which war you look at, they're fighting each other, yet they all look like each other, and they all wear the same regalia. And that's because they are. Here's Hitler's desk. Yeah, have you ever seen this picture?
I always wondered if this was legit. Seems
It
right.
is. Yeah, it's Hitler's bureau. And his ancestor, Frederick the Great, the Vatican appointed vassal king of Prussia from 1740 to 1786, was on the wall above. Oh, crap. Where did that go? What's going on? Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's very sensitive. And look what he's got on him. He's got the 8-sided octagon. Can you see that? He's wearing the Templar. He's got the octagon. Here's another picture I pulled off the internet of him. He's got the Jesuit 16 plus 16, 32 pointed Jesuit flag logo. And again, the Jesuit logo has the Knights Templar cross right here in the top. Right now,
You
what's
put an old
going?
mustache on him, he almost looks like Hitler, huh?
Do you see what I'm saying? And they all start to look like each other, and you're like, what is going on here? Right? Because they are all these bloodlines, which we will get into. So, what I'm calling Swiss Templar, Jesuit, Knights of Malta, Nazis in the Third Reich. Yeah, I got to move you guys down. So the Jesuits, so everyone thinks the Third Reich was German. They weren't. They weren't. They were Swiss. The Jesuits and the Vatican funded Hitler, and Eric John Phelps wrote about this. Did you guys ever read Vatican Assassins? It's a crazy book. It's long. It's
No,
like
it's
1,200
on my
pages.
list.
Who
I mean,
wrote
it's
that?
1,200 pages. Eric John Phelps. And this dude has been thrown off every social media platform. Like he got kicked off his radio show. This dude, you'll never hear his name again. They threw him off of everything. But he showed where the Hitler's maid talked about where these Jesuits turned up with trunks of gold in the middle of the night. And she had to serve them tea, and they were giving them all this cash. And then the Jesuit Bernard Stempfel, have you ever heard he helped Hitler write Mein Kampf? I would suggest that Bernard Stempfel wrote it. He was a Jesuit priest. I think he wrote Mein Kampf for Hitler. Because Hitler, when you read his other writings, he's not that literate, let's call him. I'm not saying he's illiterate. I'm saying he couldn't have come up with that.
So
And then the Knights of
Mein Kampf, the idea of being kind of a cover story to blame, the Zionists and create that whole dialectic just to cover up the continual through line of Jesuit global control.
Yeah, just like we talked about last time with the secret teachings of the elders of Bourges Fontaine and how there was these cover stories. By the way,
Elders of Zion or whatever.
Yeah. By the way, the word Zion comes from the Irish word Sion, which means the sun, the great light in the sky, or the lights in the heaven. So the priory of Sion in Zionism is Irish sun worship. But that's none of my business. But the Knights of Malta funded him through their U.S. banking networks, and Switzerland funded Hitler and then put all of their key Swiss men into top ranking positions to kind of control and support him. Heinrich Himmler, right? Heil Himmler. He was the head of the SS. He was Swiss born. SS Obergrubenführer General Leonardo Conti. He was known as the Swiss sadist, the torturer. Swiss born. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death. Dr. Mengele, Swiss. Klaus Barbie, head of the Gestapo, the butcher of Lyon, Swiss. SS Karl Jaeger, Einsatzkommando, mass murderer and genocide, Swiss. Dr. Ernst Rudin, the head of the Swiss torment trio, leading the Nazi racist eugenics program, Swiss. Rudolf Hoss, commander of Auschwitz, Swiss. Christian Wirth, Christian the Terrible, he was called, Swiss. Julius Streicher, he was the publisher of it's in German, it's got a different name, but in English he called Stormtrooper Nazi magazine, Swiss. And I've got a list of 50 more. I'm just giving you some key ones here. Well, these aren't Nazis. These are Swiss. Well, they are Nazis, but they're Swiss Nazi Templars. Now, this is great. So on the left, can you see this all right?
Yeah.
We've got Germans invading Poland in September 1939 in their Panzer tanks, and they have Swiss flags on them. They're in black and white, so you can't see it. What the hell are Nazi tanks doing painted in Swiss flags? On the right here is the German soldiers on the left at the Swiss border with the Swiss troops at the border. It's in the middle of World War II. And they've got a wooden pole and they're all having a laugh together, right? But what's hysterical is on the German side is a Shell gas side. And Shell, by that time, it is the Royal Dutch Shell Company, but in 1915, I think, or 16, they switched over to Shell Company of California. So they're no longer Royal Dutch Shell. So the Americans are selling gas to the Nazis who are supposed to be their enemies in World War II. And they're selling them Shell gas. That's crazy, right?
Well,
So
I
you
mean,
can
we
see
know
that.
that happened with a lot of different corporations, right? Ford, IBM. There was a lot of, you know.
Yeah, and a lot of the banking, the Templar banking is in America as well. Yeah, the Bushes come into that too. I'm not going to go into that, but
I was, yeah, I was
yeah,
just going to ask if we could contemporize this with some of the American politician families, most notably the Bushes with Prescott, who was, very connected with that whole crew there.
yeah, and some, yeah. Do you know more? You're welcome to say, Bear. Go ahead and jump in if you've got some
No,
more
I
juice on
just,
that.
I don't want to interrupt. I'm
We
just
have a
saying it's, they have a long, illustrious history with, funding and completely supporting that side of the war when we were supposedly fighting against them.
Yes, absolutely. And I did a movie called Bill Gates' Secret Bloodlines Exposed. He's related to the Bushes, and he's got Swiss relatives and KKK, and I went into everyone who he's related to and all the gas and banking, and he's also in this. Um, so yeah, so I think Mike, like what you were saying in the truth community, these movies, first of all, don't you wonder, like they're really popular in the alternative community, right? These Europa, the Final Battle, and what was the other one you said? I saw it too.
oh, the greatest story never told.
Yeah, but I mean, for alternative movies, aren't they huge? Like they're pretty massively watched by millions.
Oh yeah.
So what we have to ask is, what was Hitler's job? Right? Really, what was his job? So what we have to look at is, what did he really do? Well, he started a war that ended up killing 3% of the world population, 70 to 85 million people. He closed down all of the non-Roman Catholic, meaning like Scottish Rite, uh, it infiltrated Freemasonry lodges, in other words, Rosicrucians, and any of the Masonry lodges that still had the old Hermetic knowledge and not infiltrated in Germany, and in every invaded territory. He shut down. He kicked out the real Masons, who are the Freemasons, PHRE, who are the enemies of the Jesuits. So he did that. He rounded up the Jews and Gypsies, which just meant travelers who didn't pay tax, in Germany. Many who had been expelled, that you don't hear that Switzerland expelled the Jews before before the Third Reich came around. And he killed a lot of Jews and Gypsies in other countries like Poland. And these are also enemies of the Jesuits, tax-paying wanderers. The bombing of Dresden is highly suspicious. They the official reports are the bombing of Dresden killed 25,000 people. There are some people claiming 5 or 600,000. I don't know. But they were mostly Protestants and nationalists, German nationalists and Protestants, women and children. It was just random. There were no military targets. They say it was industrial targets, but they bombed the whole freaking city. They didn't just bomb like industrial targets. They were just blowing up apartment buildings. Same shit Israel's doing today. And it was a 3-day bombing raid. So when you look into it, the Luftwaffe, you say, where was the Luftwaffe? And they say, oh, well, what they were doing is they'd bomb this over here in Poland and make them go over there, bomb this. So they did, and you're like, well, after 3 days, don't you think they would have sent an Air Force back to like do something about it? Where were they?
What's
No,
that
they
sound
just,
like? Recent happenings maybe over in the Middle East.
doesn't it? It just, this reeks of this. Yeah. So then, as you and I were talking about on text, Mike, he made terrible military decisions. When people to this day are like, "What the hell was this guy doing?" He led to 4.3 to 5.3 million German soldiers. It led them to their slaughter, or to freeze and starve to death in the cold in campaigns with bad equipment or inadequate supply chains in Russia or whatever. Terrible, terrible strategy.
Yeah, they were like, initiate the Napoleon strategy. Go. Like this, there's so many synchronicities or similar things that between Napoleon and Hitler, it's really interesting. In fact, like how they both tried to go into Russia. They're also both fascinated with Egypt and discovering occulted treasures and things like that.
Funny enough, Hitler was he was obsessed with the pharaohs. And Pharaoh and Führer are very close in name again, Kaiser, Caesar, Führer, Pharaoh. He was really obsessed, especially with Nefertiti. Yeah. So then at the end of the war, I don't know where you guys stand on this. I'd love to actually hear your opinion. He either shoots himself in the head or he fled the country through the Swiss Red Cross, the spy network called the Red Cross, which I have to be careful because someone I'm not going to say who this person is. Someone very close to me it works for them. And, they were running what's called the Nazi rat lines, where they were smuggling Nazis out of Germany at the end of the World War through Red Cross supply lines to get them to Venezuela and Argentina. But either way, so he either shoots himself or he leaves, and then he left 1 million German soldiers to die in the American-controlled Rheinschweizenlager concentration camps that were called the Rhine camps along the Rhine River. What do you guys think? Did Hitler bail out of there, or do you think he died?
It sure seems like there's a lot of evidence that he was moved to the southern hemisphere, and of course that goes into the whole, connection with Antarctica and supposedly the technology that was brought down there with the Germans and so forth. But it's all hearsay. It's fascinating, but there's a lot of people in that part of the world that swear they have firsthand knowledge of him and all his ancestors being down there.
It seems pretty good. And like the thing is, the Jesuits already had their colonies set up in those places, and they are working with the Swiss Templar by this point. So yeah, I think it's very possible they moved him out in the rat lines. To me, what this looks like, this is my disclaimer, this is my opinion. In other words, Hitler did exactly what he was supposed to do to Protestant Germany for the Jesuit, Swiss Templar, Knights of Malta, Roman Catholic Church, and the Vatican. His job was to get all of the Protestant Germans killed in a war. He sent all his men off to be slaughtered, and then he just bails out at the end, probably to Argentina.
Another interesting thing is Eisenhower's granddaughter right now is really making the rounds and swearing that, the Nazis were the official victors of World War II and never conceded defeat. And so that's another little dimension, whether or not. Now, she brings in other elements that stretch my imagination a bit, but interesting nevertheless.
You're talking about Laura Eisenhower.
Yeah.
She's a weird one because she's in on all that David Wilcock and the aliens and the
exactly.
Project Hitler's
Camelot.
on the base on the moon.
We have to get into the reptilians and the blue ones and everything else. So okay.
She to me reeks of like Jesuit opposition, but I don't know. So I'm just saying you. But yeah, I've always taken her and that ilk with a grain of salt. The funniest thing I ever saw, Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot. She had a super soldier.
Another
on, right?
one of those.
Yeah, she had the super soldier on, and he's like talking about everything. He goes, whenever you hear the word project in front of it, it's them, it's the government. She goes, except Project Camelot.
Yeah.
I was like, exactly. Project Camelot. Yeah. I don't trust Laura Eisenhower as far as I could throw her Jesuit father, Swiss Templar father. He was we'll get into him. So anyway,
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so there he is.
I've seen the picture. I've seen some interesting photos of supposedly old Hitler as a gaucho on a ranch in Argentina. So, and he supposedly passed away maybe 15, 20 years ago. So, yeah, if you go down that rabbit hole, I mean, they even had, but the thing is, of course, they had that even on the History Channel and stuff. They had a whole series around it. So, God knows.
Yeah, I don't trust a damn thing on History Channel because to me, that's the perfect. The average douchebag watches that kind of stuff. So that's exactly where I'd be feeding them garbage. So
after the evening news.
Yeah, after that garbage, after they rode home on the train reading the evening paper. Yeah, I don't trust it. But again, there he is wearing his Templar regalia, or we could call it Knights of Malta or whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm just using Templar as a term. Now, in our last talk, we talked about Lord Balfour, right?
Mhm.
He signed the
The
Balfour
Declaration.
Declaration after World War I in 1917 with the Rothschilds, where they would give the Jews a homeland in Palestine, which is what's going on right now. And then right after he does that, he wins the Order of Merit, right, for doing that. Well, look at it. It's on the bottom. Look at that medal. Do you recognize that red cross? Look,
Looks familiar.
right? They give this to the guy who gives the Jews a homeland. They give him a Roman Catholic Knights Templar cross. And the same here. Here's another one he got. Then he wins the Most Noble Order of the Garter, which is a chivalry founded by Edward III. Well, there it is. It's the cross. That's the City of London. That's the Templar. That's the Templar cross right there. That's what he gets. All right. This guy is the Jews around the world. Count Kalergi was the guy I told you guys about last time, the Kalergi plan, where he's allegedly flooding Europe with all the immigrants to mix us so that the Jews can take over the world. And he had 2 Roman Catholic parents. Look at the medal. I'll get to move you guys out of the way. It's an 8-pointed octagon in gold around the Templar cross. The Jews around the world, but he's got a Swiss octagon. Get out of here. Again, these stories. I threw this in for fun because there's so many more. There was a list of like 100, especially a lot of movie stars, Meryl Streep and what's his name, Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Bridges, and there's so many other ones. And also the dudes who founded Sacramento. You guys aren't by Sacramento, are you? Or?
I mean, not that close.
It's
No.
southeast.
Oh no, right. Okay. Well, Sacramento was founded by 2 Swiss as well. But no, these are notable Swiss Americans. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, who started and ran the FBI. He's Swiss, Templar. Dwight D. Eisenhower, President Eisenhower. There's Laura Eisenhower, right? That's her. There's Laura Eisenhower's daddy. He was president. He's Swiss. He's not American. He's Swiss American. Herbert Hoover, president, related to J. Edgar Hoover. Barack Obama, believe it or not, one of his parents is Swiss. The other ones, we don't even know where the other one's from. Albert Gallatin, Secretary of the Treasury in the 1800s. Herbert Hoover Jr., Undersecretary of State. Steve Jobs, Swiss. Apple putting spyware into all of our phones and shit. He's Swiss. George Lucas, space pusher. Albert
Also,
Einstein,
interesting
particle
George
pusher.
Interesting George Lucas pushes stormtroopers. I was thinking of that, the whole
Oh,
Nazi.
good connection, man. Yeah, I didn't think of that, man. Wow. Good
We
one.
were talking about man, because the whole thing with scientism all relates to this, right? And of course, a Jesuit pushing the Big Bang. We touched on that last show. And
Did you? Yeah, Copernicus. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Copernicus. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Copernicus pushing the model, the solar model, but what's his name in the 20th century was a Jesuit who propagated I always forget his name, propagated the actual Big Bang theory.
Oh,
yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Albert Einstein, though, what a peach that guy is.
Well, he's Swiss. He's not German. He's Swiss. Steve Ballmer, he's the CEO for Microsoft. He's Swiss. Tucker Carlson, I call him propagandist. Swiss.
I wonder what Oppenheimer. We were talking about Oppenheimer too before the last night or whatever. I finally saw that 3-hour snoozer, and it is quite interesting. They were claiming that this movie was what saved Hollywood last year. That and the Barbie movie. And I mean, talk about a propaganda flick, but they do put Einstein in kind of a nice light, of course, as they need to. He's like the hero of the 20th century scientism. But
read the memoirs of Wilhelm Reich and see what you think about Eisenhower. I mean, not Eisenhower. I meant
Einstein.
Yeah.
Vicious, right?
Yeah, Einstein. I meant. Sorry.
Well, I mean, you guys had Austin Whitsitt on a couple of weeks ago. I watched that. Was great show, by the way, with Austin. That was amazing. That was awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so Einstein's pushing particles. They got, the other guy, Copernicus is pushing space balls and all that crap.
Yeah.
I love the ones, like if you look at early Stephen Hawking's before he's got the speaking spell.
Uh-huh.
Remember when he had that blonde translator? Stephen Hawking's would go, "Hey, yeah, 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 yeah," and then the guy next to him's like, he says the black hole is infinitely long and the universe is this, and then you're like,
Yeah.
how did you get that out of like, it's just ridiculous. Nobody ever said, wait a
That's
minute,
great.
you can't possibly be
Hilarious.
translating that from that. But anyway, and then Warren E. Burger's another. Now there's a list of like hundreds of these. I just picked a few ones. There were something like 50 governors, and there's just so many of these guys. So they are running the banking and the government. They're running it from Switzerland in America. So America is part of this whole thing. Now, this is where I think you guys are going to love this shit. I hope I'm going to drop some massive gravy on you right here. So this is a Swiss coin from 1987. On the left is the Swiss goddess Helvetia or Helvetia, right? She's called Helvetia. She's the goddess of hell, the night, and the underworld, or what you'd call Isis. And the word Suisse comes from the French-speaking Templars. So a lot of the Knights Templar, the royals, French was the noble language of the royals. I should explain this. And like I told you, a lot of the Templar Crusaders were royalty, were nobles. So it didn't matter what country you lived in Europe. French was how they all talked, how we all talk English now. Back then, French was the international or the European language that all the royalty talked. So a lot of the Templars were second, third, fifth, sixth born. They all spoke French. So when they
It
came
remains
back,
a diplomatic language as well.
yeah, Barry, yeah, it still is to this day. French is the diplomatic language because not many people speak. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. So anyway, when they came back from the Crusades, the word Suisse comes from the French-speaking Templars who founded Switzerland, which is Isis, Suisse, Sister de Isis. It's Isis, the goddess of the night, the underworld, which they would have definitely picked up in Egypt. And I'll show you later that Isis is Irish. Actually, she's the Irish moon goddess. But they would have got this in the names. But get ready for this, man. Drum roll, please. Another name, and can you see on the left? Can you see the coin?
Mhm.
Helvetia, she's got the Swiss flag. Do you see she's got the Templar flag on the shield? And
Oh,
she's
yeah.
Helvetia, and she's got the sword, which the Jesuits have on the side of their logo, right? See that? Another name for Helvetia is Vatica, Vatika.
There you go.
Fascinating.
And here we go. The Vatican is named after the Etruscan goddess of hell and the underworld, Vatica. Right? Helvetia, Helvetica. The Etruscans, they lived in northern Italy. They found them in as early as 900 BC, if you trust carbon dating and archaeology, which I don't, but that's modern history. She's Isis. She's Isis, totally. Switzerland's Helvetia is the same goddess as the Vatican's Vatica, Helvetica, Isis. Isis is the moon in the night, and is the ancient Irish goddess, Isis. Her name is in Irish. Her name is Isis. Isis, which means she herself, and along with T or he, the sun. She did not found. The story says that Isis was a real person, and that she founded the first colony in Egypt. That's BS. She's just another stolen Irish history allegory by the church and put into history. But isn't that fascinating that Switzerland and the Vatican have the same goddess and are named after the same one, which is Isis, and Switzerland's named after that. So now, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to start naming names, man. Are you okay with that on the show?
Please.
Yeah, just this is all on Steve, evil ones.
Yeah, do you want to make a disclaimer that you do not necessarily represent the views of da.
No, go for it.
Because I think, Barry, as you always say, this is all fun history. What we're talking about is fun, isn't it? But what can we do with this?
Entertainment purposes only.
Well, for me, I'm saying, what can we do with this knowledge right now? And I'm saying when I start to tell you who's doing this and when and where and how they're doing it and which organizations they're doing it through, if you work for them or you know them or you have anything to do with them, you can now empower yourself and the planet by stopping associating with any of this crap, which is very empowering. And if you want to change the world, I think you need to know who's kicking you in the nuts if you want to stop getting kicked in the nuts. That's my opinion.
And it also gives you clues as far as where they got their original knowledge, which allows us to go to those sources and find real science that can be put to a practical use that can overcome all of the things they have weaponized against us. So this isn't just purely an intellectual, journey here. It does have practical application.
Yeah, and the thing is this, that you and Mike's whole channel, Alpha Vedic, is about everything you guys talk about is the knowledge, the ancient hermetic knowledge and alchemical knowledge that these elites found and brought back and have. They're using it against you. And like you say, knowledge is not good or bad. It can be wielded in for beneficial or bad ways. So your whole channel is, you guys are like Irish Freemasons, PHRE. You guys are the
Well, what we
the
try to
OPs,
promote
the original
also,
freeze.
and we try to promote, we can only give a cursory amount of the practical application because a lot of it takes a little bit of learning and then having your own experience. But we do encourage people to do these things. And I don't like to leave things just on a purely intellectual level. We give hints and sources of where you can go have your own laboratory experience, what you can learn out in nature and growing things. And that's where the real learning, begins. But of course, they want to keep us in this narrative where we're caught in the mental plane. And of course, the mental plane is nothing more than an indoctrinated memory bank. So our sensory apparatus has to take in data bits and then filter through that. And then that projects a very distorted, narrow, very extremely narrow view of the big picture. And then that goes out back into the ethers to imprint and then keep the whole vicious circle going. So what we're trying to say is experience will get you into that other half, that thinking, the real thinking brain, which happens to be your heart. That heart is much more neurologically sophisticated and works on a pure level of incoming resonance that is able to understand on a multiplicity of planes rather than just on a singular linear dimension. And now when you experience on that level, you're going to really get your true learning and not just be confined to your mental plane. And the way we started this whole discussion today was talking about, some of the internet drama. And what we all have to realize is when we're having these discussions, it is fun, it is informative, it can lead to good things, but all too often people remain in this linear thought pattern and just keep projecting the same old reality and what they think is true rather than experiencing through pure resonance, which is going to get you into real life and also help us transcend the pure or linear mental plane, we'll say. So,
I'll add
yeah.
one thing on that too. The irony is here that all of the scientism that we dispel week by week, that seems very obvious to be proposed and positioned by the people we're talking about today, has done absolutely zero to positively affect your life in any way. Even in the technology we use, modern day physics, quantum physics, theory of relativity, it does zilch, zero. The camera I'm looking at right now is using electricity and mechanics that was known about hundreds and thousands of years ago. Computers, all of that technology that it's the modern, physics and stuff has nothing to do with it. So that's all just mysticism and religion that is used to compromise and control people. And what we're talking about here is those who understood, the original Templars understood the true sciences, which we're bringing back, that are really what is still driving reality today.
And, you know, Steve, I haven't talked to you much about my personal experience, but when I did the write up for today's show and I just made a little comment, if it doesn't grow corn, you know, what good is it? I got that term long ago in my youth, not because I was searching for it, but I was taken under the wing of a traditional shaman who was very old at that time and came from an ancient lineage, and it was just meant to be. That's a whole story for a different time. But he did things that bent my noodle forever and defied my logic and made things happen in the physical realm on the moment that are, you know, defy what we think of as the laws of physics. So that had a great effect on me. But he was also the most grounded person in the world that I've ever met. And I did an extensive apprenticeship with him, we'll say, and he explained to me why, you know, he did that for me. But his term was, if it doesn't grow corn, what's the point? So it really has to have consequences in this realm that we are having an experience in. You need to get out there, but then you need to bring it back, have your own experience, and realize that we are much more masterful than we think as far as you know, our potential. So that's the real stuff that we're talking about here. Is this is a great history, and all the different documentaries that give us little bits of truth and then subterfuge in other ways. Well, you know, the best takeaway from all that is it's all a bunch of horse shit, and we can say that, you know, hey, we've had the wool pulled over our eyes in every single aspect of life. Let's kind of see who these folks were, what their motives were, where they got their original source material, and get over it. So please go on.
Yeah, man. How can I follow that, Bear? Interesting enough, I don't want to get off topic, but wild corn to this day is still not edible because the seeds are too rough to grow and the animals can't eat. Yellow corn just shouldn't really exist. It's genetically modified from the ancients. There's the corn we eat is the other wild corn has been the same forever and ever and ever. So there's something
Yeah.
weird about corn. As you said, Mike, I think the ancients probably were in so advanced they were genetically modifying, because they say it would take 70 generations of farmers to crossbreed yellow corn, and you just wouldn't do that as a sustenance, you know, year by year agricultural. I don't know what they call it, society. So yeah, kind of weird, but yeah. I think we aren't the first advanced civilization on the earth, and I think we probably aren't the best advanced civilization on the earth. But before I want to go on, by the way, I laughed the other day, Patrick Henningsen. By the way, if you're, you know, I know the news sucks, but you do need to keep up a little bit with what's going on. So if anyone's not listening to Patrick Henningsen, 21st Century Wire, you know, 21st Sunday Wire and TNT Radio, he had a guy on the other day. That shit happened where Israel bombed an embassy in Iran, right, and killed some people, and so Iran retaliated with these drones and missile strikes to show they could get through the dome. And guess who brokered the deal? So Iran told America first, we're going to counterstrike with this, and this. And this is what we're going to do. And we know they're going to shoot this down, but we're just showing them we're going to get supersonic missiles in here. And they did. They got 7 of them through. Guess which embassy brokered the deal between Iran and America? The Swiss embassy. My jaw hit the ground. I was like, holy shit, you know. So now who's
And weren't
behind
those
Switzerland?
missile strikes coinciding with some activities in CERN in Switzerland as well?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, and then and Israel retaliated. But what Iran did was genius, is they sent in a bunch of like you know, $200,000 drones, real slow moving, and Israel's Iron Dome shot them down. And then they sent in 7 supersonic cruise missiles that got right through the Israeli defense. The problem is, and they didn't strike any real targets, no civilians, no nothing, some runways, some military targets, but easily rebuildable, just to show them we can get through. Israel spent $1 billion on defense that night, shooting down all of this stuff, and Iran spent about like Yeah, a couple 100 million, maybe. And Iran said, well, how many billions do you got of defense? If we did this to you 10 days in a row, you're going to run out, and we're not. And it showed the world, and Israel now is tits up, as we talked about last time. Remember, I said the U.S. is going to go back and go, oh, and leave Israel hanging in the wind to mutual destroy each other with the Arabs. As we talked about, whether that Pike letter is real or not, or whatever, that's the plan. And Jesuit Biden just did it. But I thought it was fascinating that the Swiss embassy, out of anyone, was brokering that deal. But anyway, so who's behind Switzerland? Switzerland's not behind all of this. The Jesuits aren't behind all of this. The Vatican's not behind all. Who is it? Who is it? We all want to know who's doing this, right? So we have what's called the 18 families of the Black nobility. There are actually 5, and then 13, and then 18. So without getting too boring, the Black nobility, what are they? They're oligarchy, which means you're not the royals, but you're the next people under the royals, right? You're like the dukes and earls and blah, 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 blah. They were the families, the oligarchic families of Venice and Genoa, Italy, who in the 12th century, right? Again, when all this Mike, like you said, this is right when all this is kicking off. They held the privileges to trading rights and monopolies, the first really monopolies, because of the first 3 crusades had opened up these trading routes, and these were the trading families who took control or advantage of the crusaders guarding trading routes. You didn't have to get robbed anymore trading on these open roads. So from 1063 to 1123, that's when these Venetian Black nobility solidify their power of the wealthy ruling class. And then it says the Black nobility aristocracy achieved complete control over Venice by 1171, when the appointment of the, I don't know if it's Doga or Doge, I don't know how to pronounce that, but a Doge was the head of the state and the head of the Venetian oligarchy at the time. So he's like the dude over the state and the oligarchy. And then the oligarchy got together and said, screw the Doge or Doge or whatever he is. We're going to run, fuck him. So they chucked him out, and they made what was called the Great Council, which today we call the Committee of 300, the Round Table, right? You've heard all these terms before, which consisted of members of the commercial aristocracy. Among them was the de' Medici family. We talked about them last time. Cosimo de' Medici had like 4 relatives who were popes and bankers, you know. So what these dudes started doing, because the popes appoint these people, but what they started figuring out is if we get our family into popes, they can keep appointing us because we are the popes. So they kind of merge with them. So Venice has remained in their hands ever since. But the power and influence of the Venetian Black nobility extends way beyond its borders of Venice and is felt in every corner of the planet. Even though there aren't corners on the planet, it's round, but have a disc shape. And it says, don't forget our modern banking system originated in Italy. No, it didn't. Our modern banking system originated with the Knights Templar, with banks and checking, and then Jewish usury loans was another part of it. And it's this hybrid that makes our modern banking system. And that's very important for people to know. So anyway, in 1204, these oligarchic families parceled out feudal enclaves. An enclave is just where you say, like, we're in a state, then we put a part within the state, but we leave another part that's still the state in between the state and us. So we're like, it's like DC or Vatican or whatever. Like, nobody knows whose laws we follow because we're not you and we're not us. And so they build up all this power and pressure until the government becomes a closed corporation, which we have now, right? All of our governments are corporations. And they were run by the leading Black nobility families. Now, there was a guy, you both know, Dr. John Coleman. You must surely have heard and read his books and work, right?
Yes.
Got his book right here.
You got it, yeah. Which one do you have, Mike?
Oh, just the classic right here.
There she is, baby. Yeah.
Conspiracies Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of the 300. He wrote this like 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he wrote another one called The Black Nobility Unmasked Worldwide in 1985. Before that, I think your book's 1992. So 7 years earlier, he wrote The Black Nobility Unmasked worldwide. Then he wrote that book you just held up. Christopher Columbus, I'm not going to get into that. Cristobal Colonia would have been his name. He's bullshit. He's a fictional story, like Napoleon, I think. But anyways, they're called the Black Nobility because they earned their title through dirty tricks. If anyone like the population revolted, they would just round up the leaders and then like brutally hang them in the public squares, which is what the Bolsheviks did, which, as we talked about last time, were not Jewish. They were Jesuit. And then they'd use like secret assassinations, murder, blackmail, bankruptcy. So that's where they got it. So now what we need to know is who were these black nobility, but we need to know who are they now and what other families have they morphed into, right? If we want to know who's controlling us, they're not the same as they were 1,000 years ago. But the original families, I'll just come down to this here. So we know what they're all about. They were called the Colonna, the Massimo Orsini, Raspoli, Pallavicini, Teodoli, Sacchetti, Borghesi, Odeselci, and I can't even pronounce that one. Whatever, they're gone anyway. Many of these families were largely ceremonial papal noble guards, like the Swiss guards are today. So they were guarding the Vatican alongside the Swiss guards back then. Now, today, this is really important. So I'm going to name the names now. Drum roll, please. So we all hear about the 13 Illuminati bloodlines, right? And what's all these bloodlines and who is it? Is it the House of Guelph or the House of Windsor? I'm going to show you how this works anyway, from what I understand. The real bloodlines of the Illuminati, in other words, the houses today that are in power behind the Vatican, behind the Knights of Malta, behind the Jesuits, Knights of St. John, Knights Templar, all of them. They're the House of Borgia, House of the Breakspear. Henry Breakspear is in Macau, China. Now, he's not the head guy right now, but because of the Chinese One Belt, One Road initiative, we all know about that. China and Asia are set to launch to be the Jesuit stronghold for the New World Order. So I'm going to tell you, my guess is Pepe Orsini, the Gray Pope, which we'll get into. I think he's going to get replaced by Henry Breakspear or whoever the next Breakspear lineage is, because they're setting up China and the One Belt, One Road initiative to be their stage point for the next. House of Somaglia, Orsini, we've all heard that. Rothschilds and Rockefellers are Orsinis, which used to be called the Maxima family, the primo numero una, the number one. The House of Conti, Chigi, Colonna. That's Colonna, Germany. Colonia, these are the Colonna. The Farnese, we'll get into him, and I'm going to show you guys that. We talked about Medici and De Medici, Gaetani, Pamphili, and the House of Este, and the House of the Aldobrandini. All right. They claim that they are Egyptian Ptolemaic dynasty rulers that are in full control of the Company of Jesus, which is the Jesuits, the High Council of 10, the High Gray Council of 10, which is the Knights of Malta in Switzerland, and the Black Pope, who runs the Jesuits. In the map on the top, the Ptolemaic area is the dotted line here, the yellow, and then the green. Well, that's Greece, Upper Egypt, and guess what? Jerusalem, Israel, where all the problems are today. That's them. They say they come from all this right here, where all this shit is going down today, right? So the Black Pope, we talked about it a little bit last time. There's the White Pope, which is Francis, who's a Jesuit. The Black Pope, who's the Jesuit General Director, and the Gray Pope, who is Pepe Orsini, who is the Sovereign Knights of Malta Pope. And the Gray Pope's supposed to be the best. It used to be this guy on the bottom right, Adolfo Nicholas. I don't know if he died or retired. So the new guy is Arturo Sosa since 2016. This is the guy, people. I'm not telling you to do anything, whatever you want to do. But if you want to know who's dicking you in the butt, it's that guy right there. And he looks really friendly. But I'm telling you, he's not. So the Black Pope is the Superior General Jesuit, the president of the world. And he speaks at Loyola to the military forces university and is unratified 14th Amendment little Rome, DC, United States corporation like the Vatican and City of London. And they're a corporation under international maritime admiralty law, which is the universal commercial code, which you guys just did a talk about equity. Now, what's great is, I saw your talk with those three great guests about equity and how to write this. They've left this open where if you want to learn their system, you can get out of this. So they're not that so evil that you're all screwed. They've made it open. Like, if you don't want to be a peasant and you want to learn the ways of us, we'll let you out of this.
Yeah,
So that,
they have to give themselves a get out of karma free card.
yeah. Do you believe in that? Like, is that what you believe their motive is, that they know if they screw you too hard, they're screwed?
Well, it's part of the magic too. If they tell us somewhere exactly what they're doing, they believe it gives them even more power if they have our consent.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, yeah, you say, well, I didn't do it to you. You did it to yourself. I told you. I think that's what all these Simpsons episodes are about and all this predictive programming. They're saying, like, well, you should have been paying attention, right? Like, they're saying, I put it right in your face, man. If you didn't see it, whose fault is that? It's your fault. Um, so these guys, the Black Pope lies about his power. He's been over the White Pope since 1814. However, when this was written, this article, Francis now is the first Jesuit Pope. So this is really dangerous times we're in, because it's the first time that the Pope is actually a Jesuit as well. It used to be the White Pope subordinate to the Black Pope, who's subordinate to the Gray Pope. Now you got a double whammy. You got the Black Pope and White Pope are brothers in a Jesuit organization. Like, oh my God. So this is really dangerous times we're in right now. And he only serves and works with the shadows of the Jesuits because he's the papal bloodline of the Orsinis, the Breakspears, Aldobrandinis, Farneses, and Somalias. So out of these families I just named, if you want to know who's the top 5 people running this world, that's them. The Orsinis, Pepe Orsini is the Gray Pope. He's in charge. The Breakspears, Henry Breakspear out of Macau, China. The Aldobrandinis, the Farneses, and the Somalias. That's the top 5 right now. I'm not telling you to go kill them or anything. I'm just telling you, if you're like that, you might start there. So here they are. All right. But they're all controlled through the Jesuit order and the Knights of Malta and the Teutonic Knights, which are the Templars and St. John's and Hospitallers. And they're based in a missile protected Borgo Santo Spirito in Rome. So that's where they're based. The orders are coming out of there from these 5 families. That's where it's all coming from. The orders they give are managed out of Switzerland, which we've all just talked about, where it's being, they say, do this, and then they say, we'll do this. But Switzerland is not doing anything. They're taking the orders and saying, here's how we're going to do it. Pepe Orsini, the Orsinis are number 1 in this family list, is the current Gray Pope. Henry Breakspear in Macau, China is the second biggest. I would predict that if the Jesuits are setting up China in the One Belt, One Road initiative, if Asia is supposed to be the next superpower after they take down America, I would suggest that the Orsinis will lose power to the Breakspears, but I'm not sure. Oh, shit. Hold on. Something bad happened there. Hold on. I'm almost there. Here we go. Sorry, yeah. So this is what's going on. Now, here's the true power in the family. So we hear about, well, what about these European Black nobility, right? I've just showed you the Italian and the Spanish ones. Well, this is the power family. The rest of them are called the Guelph and the Ghibelline power structure. So these families have been marrying and moving out into other countries into subfamilies. The Cecil families were controlled by the Jesuit family known as the Pallavicini, which I named in the top 13. Maria Camilla Pallavicini, she's more powerful than the Queen Elizabeth was. She's dead now, or King Charles now, sausage fingers. And the Queen and Prince Philip at that time, this was written, are subordinate to the papal bloodline of the Breakspear family, and they have their Jesuit UK headquarters at 114 Mount Street. So again, I'm not suggesting you do anything, but if you're that inclined, the people screwing you are living at 114 Mount Street. Go pay them a visit. Right? And you can look at who funded Elizabeth I, a ton of money to fight the Spanish. Well, yeah, it was Pallavicini family gave her all the money. They have what's called the fondi. So all the black nobility families pooled their money together and made what's called the fund or the fondi. They have more money than, like, if you think Rothschilds have $3 trillion, these guys have like, nobody knows what it's worth, but it's probably a number that doesn't even exist. So right now, the most powerful man is in the world is the Roman by the name of Pepe Orsini, the Gray Pope. He's the most powerful Roman papal bloodline of the Orsini, known as the Orso. And as I said earlier, they were called the Maximus. Maximus means number one, we're in charge. There's no one more powerful than the Gray Pope. Now, I'm going to show you later, there are some people who say the Jesuits have taken that over. So again, as I said, I'm going to present some conflicting information. Anyway, the papal bloodlines are the secret shadow hierarchy of the Jesuit order behind the Black Pope, touted at number one. And the bloodlines are Breakspear, Somalia, Orsini, Farnese, Aldobrandini. And you'll see people like David Rothschild, who is an Orsini. He's actually a Rothschild is an Orsini with a new name. He married into the Aldobrandini with Princess Olympia Aldobrandini. And then the Henry Breakspear, as we talked about in China. Now, the weird thing is a lot of these elites have moved to Asia and India. Now, why did they do that? Well, that's where the One Belt, One Road initiative's coming in through. So isn't it funny? They're all leaving Europe. What's going to happen in Europe? Why are they going there? At the time this was written, Adolfo Nicholas, as I just said, he's not the current. Arturo Sosa is the new Black Pope. But at the time this was written, it was Nicholas. And he was brought forward to the position because the Jesuits were bringing about Asia as the next power play of the agenda. And we are seeing that now with the One Belt, One Road initiative. So the subfamilies, these are the ones people think are in charge. I've just named you the 13 and 5 families are really in charge, but they intermarry and intermarry and intermarry. So you've got House of Bernadotte, Sweden. That is these Knights of St. John that I'm not going to talk about because I live here. House of Bourbon, France, remember that. Braganza, Portugal. House of Grimaldi, Monaco. House of Guelph, Britain. That's the most important one. Queen of Lizard Breath. House of Habsburg, Austria. We've all heard of them. Hanover, Germany, second biggest one. House of Hohenzollern, Germany. I can't even pronounce the Yugoslavian one. Liechtenstein. House of Nassau, Luxembourg. House of Oldenburg, Denmark, where I'm at. The royal family here is very powerful. House of Orange, Netherlands. They all wear their Dutch orange at their football games. House of Savoy, Italy. House of Wetten, Belgium. House of Wittelsbach, Germany. House of Württemberg, Germany, and Zogu, Albania. All of them are related to the Windsors, who are German. They are not English. All right. So all these families are listed and connected with the House of Guelph, which was one of the original black nobility families of Venice, from which the House of Windsor, which is fake, and Queen Elizabeth, who was before King Charles came. So the problem is the Guelphs are entwined with the German aristocracy through the House of Hanover. So that's when people say, oh, have you heard that before, that the Windsors are German? They're not English.
I've heard they were the Habsburgs, was it?
They're actually the Hanovers, actually.
Okay.
But they're German. These are fakes. They're not the monarchy of England. They're fake German ones within.
Well, they were installed. I've heard they were installed in the 19th century.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a king who claims the rightful heir to King Henry.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's an interesting cat.
Yeah, and they're all appointed by the Vatican anyway. So, like, again, do not forget where this is coming from. Like, the black nobility families appoint the popes, who appoint the black nobility families and then the royalty, so they keep their little circle of buddies going, right? So almost all European royal houses originate from the House of Hanover for Europe, and which means they come from the House of Guelph, which are the black nobility. So this is the gravy right here. I got to move you guys to the other side here. This is hilarious. Can you see on the right? That's Pope Alessandro Farnese, Pope Paul III. Think of who does that remind you of in Canada and Cuba? That picture.
Yeah. Has a resemblance to Castro and what's his name up there?
Justin Trudeau, right? Or they call
Yeah.
him Justin Castro.
Yeah, I
Apparently,
know.
Castro used to visit Trudeau's prime minister father and banged his mother. And the story goes, Justin Trudeau is the bastard son of his mom and Castro.
It's all in the family.
I think, I mean, does that not look like Justin Trudeau and Castro, young Castro? It's spitting image, right?
I can imagine that.
So there's allegedly now again here we're getting into I cannot prove this or not. This is another one of them stories that go out there. So I'm just giving this to you as take it with a grain of salt. But the Jesuit Spanish connection is the Jesuits were really founded in 1540 by this guy, Justin Castro, his uncle, Pope Paul III, Alessandro Farnese. And then there was a guy, the Borgia was one of the families. I will get into that in a bit. They were one of the top 5 families I showed you before. Don Francis Borgia was the great grandson of Pope Alexander VI and the co-founder of the Jesuits. And on his mother's side, he was descended from King Ferdinand of Aragon. And at that time, the Spanish controlled the Vatican, not the Italians through the Jesuits. But for the past 500 years, according to this, again, I'm not saying this is true, the Spanish Inquisition has controlled the Vatican by means of the Jesuits, and all the Jesuits answer to their general in Rome, and he in turn is content to run the show from behind the scenes without publicity or public acclaim, so as not to arouse the age-old Italian hostility to the Spanish. But when you start looking at them, oh crap, I don't want to see that. Can I move that? There we go. So allegedly, after the Jesuits, so you got the 13 families, then the Jesuits, the Gray Pope, then the Jesuits. So the Gray Pope's Knight of Malta. The next beneath that is the Bourbon, which the House of Bourbon was a French family, but it's King Carlos of Spain. And he's allegedly the Roman monarch of the world and the king of Jerusalem. So that's what's going on in Jerusalem. Like, it's not the tiny hat people. It's them in the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, or the Knights of Malta military navigator. And the Jesuits were created again by Farnese during the reign of Pope Paul III, which they were a top 5 black nobility family. And the Borgia crime family created the Jesuits, which were a top 13 black nobility family. And apparently what happened is this guy, Pope Alexander VI, which was called Rodrigo de Borgia. He was a Borgia, which was one of the top 5 families, top 13, 1492 to 1503. Total womanized. Just this guy was like a scumbag when you read about it. Go read about this
Didn't
guy.
they make a HBO series about him?
I would imagine, like, apparently this guy's just the scummiest piece of dog dirt you could ever find. And yeah, he was just taking advantage. So the story goes, after him, the Romans were so disgusted with the Spanish, they vowed they would never let a Spanish pope in again. They probably did make an HBO series. And the animosity toward the Spanish was aggravated because they sacked Rome in 1527 just to prevent the divorce of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. And actually, Farnese, the guy we just, Justin Trudeau Castro, he excommunicated Henry VIII because of all this. It sounds totally like an HBO special. So according to this, the Borgia answer to the Spanish animosity was the creation of the Jesuits, like a quasi-religious military strike force, whose members were dedicated to their Spanish leader, who bore the title military general. Loyola and them, they were created by the Spanish, the Jesuits, actually. Okay, here's what I want to get into. So now we've talked about who runs the world and from where. You know, who's in charge, who's the subdivision, who's the subunit. It's like a military group. How do they do this to us? And they do it through what Dr. John Coleman called the Committee of 300. So they do it through this organization that has all these people and organizations and NGOs and government agencies and all these people to do this. And I don't want to go too much into this, but I just highlighted some of the main ones. And as Americans, you'll like these. American civil, these are members of the Committee of 300. American Civil Liberties Union, American Press Institute, so that's all your press, why you can't get good news. Anti-Defamation League, that's why you can't say anything bad about anybody. The Bilderbergs, the Black Order, British Royal Society, Cathedral of St. John, Center for Advanced Studies in Behavioral Sciences, which is mind control and how to get you to behave. Center for Constitutional Rights, which you don't have any because you don't you don't have them. Club of Rome, Committee of 14, Committee to Frame a World Constitution. That's your world government, one world order. Council on Foreign Relations, De Beers, all the mining diamond people. East India Company, the Dutch East India. Fabian Society, Russell Brand. What do you think of Russell Brand? He's a good guy, isn't he?
I didn't know he had associations with Fabian Society.
He's a Fabian Society member.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, how come he's so popular? I think you guys put out way better stuff than Russell Brand. I don't know how you're not so popular, but I do. Federation of American
I think Bear's
Scientists.
sexier too, for sure.
Bear's way sexier than Russell Brand.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody noticed.
And you never dated Katy Perry, which makes you even more moral. Yeah. Federation of American Zionists. By the way, Zion comes from the Irish word Sion, which means the sun, heavenly lights. I think we said that. So Ford Foundation.
It's
Ford
also an Egyptian term, Zyron, which relates to the primordial omnipresent energy from which all matter and life precipitates.
Yes, which comes from the Irish Hebrew word Sion. Yeah, same. The Egyptians got it from them. Yes, exactly. Jesuit Fordham University. I won't go into that. Harvard, Hellfire Club. I don't think we need to name all this shit. That's going to get too long and tedious, but I just want people to see it. Institute for World Order. We've got the documents. Knights of Malta. Oh, surprise, surprise. The Knights of Malta are in the Committee of 300. League of Nations, which is NATO now. It used to be called the League of Nations. London School of Economics, MIT, the Lord Milner Group. Lord Milner started all the round table.
The World Economic Forum too. Like all of this has been converted into
all of it. National Council of Churches, NCAAP, New World Foundation, the Rand Institute, right? NATO, Order of St. John of Jerusalem, as we talked about, Order of the Golden Dawn, Oxfam. People, if you're giving money to Oxfam and Red Cross on the street, stop giving money to these people. They are part of this. Princeton, Rand Corporation, Rhodes Scholarships, Cecil Rhodes.
You know what the Rand Corporation was heavily involved with was the internet, which is what we're using right now.
Were they? Yeah. How?
Yeah, they were used DARPANET. Yeah, they were heavily influential, working with some of the universities for DARPANET, Rand Corporation.
Wow, man, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. The Socialist Party of the United States. I mean, it's just crazy.
How about the Theosophists?
Yeah, they're all in there too. I have them here. Hold on. Let me just let this run through.
I just saw them in there. Theosophist Society.
We're down at in the right. So was it this? Tavistock's in there. That's your MK
It's right
Ultra and
after
mind
the
control.
Quality of Life Institute.
Yeah, the Theosophists Society. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we
So
know
That's
that
and
was
interesting.
and the
That's an
Thule
interesting
Society.
history. You know, you have Madame Blavatsky, and then there was a little kind of a struggle with Steiner and them, and Steiner went off in his own direction because they were trying to keep certain things more secretive.
Yeah. What do you think about Blavatsky?
I think that she was a useful embodiment. This, I'm repeating things I know through other channels that I've been involved with for a long time. She was a useful embodiment and had a certain sensitivity in ways where she was like a two-stepper into the anthroposophic, which then was a two-stepper into a later, more contemporary version that laid the truth out for everybody to see and understand without any occulting.
Right. Okay. Because I know
So, you know,
Tsar.
even if we look back and some people or organizations maybe were, you know, bordering, had their foot in one or two worlds, they still, I think, provided a useful role at the time to get us to where we needed to go. And I think we need to recognize that more often.
That is what they do. Is they're social engineers. They know that most humans are neophobes. I think we talked about this last time. Most people don't want change, but their whole business model runs on change. I think you call that a neophyte, right? Their whole job
Yeah.
is to put these cultural revolution. Revolution means turn, turn, turn. They make money by selling you
And
new clothes and new shit for change. I need the new thing. And because people don't want the new thing, they have to like light a fire under your ass. Is that?
yeah, I would also suggest that there is another hierarchy that always remains hidden, not because they're up to anything sinister, exactly the opposite, but then they will actually use these more sinister motive families in order to bring about change that will benefit all. So there's, you know, there's a real chess match going on between the real intelligence and these folks that we're looking at today that are usurping the original intelligence.
Yeah, and I would suggest that behind the scenes is those 13 families actually. But so yeah, I don't want to go through all these, and people can just look here. The World Council of Churches, that's one I found interesting on the left there. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters on the right. That's the mafia, the Teamsters. International Red Cross. Hey, Kissinger Associates, right? RCA, YMCA, Russell Peace Foundation. So these are the Committee of 300. Like these are the organizations that are doing this shit to you.
what do we
And
see
then
as a common what do we see as a common thread here? It's the most generic common thread. These are all groups, these are all secret, little groups. And where are we moving now in the modern time and what we push? Decentralization, independence, individualism, right? Like
LGBTQ, LMNOP, Yeah, 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 yeah,
well,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
but I'm saying as a solution here, Steve, like this is why I'm always promoting like decentralized spirituality. Like that's what Bear was kind of getting at with Blavatsky, right? Those were stepping stones till now, where we're at a very exciting time where with the Great Awakening, no longer do we need these groups and to give power to these groups because we can do this all ourselves, decentralized. And I think that's a huge solution moving forward.
Yeah, man. I mean, like what I see here is corporatization personally. I see the removal of an individual and this hive-minded bullshit, and then the monetizing of everything, which the funnest stuff on this earth is free. It always has been. They can't,
Yep.
they'll never take that away. Like the funnest shit going on in this world is free.
Yeah, I
But
mean, we all know these are non-living zombies, essentially. These are egregores, really, that they've empowered through their black magic to try to control the world. And
yeah,
we don't
yeah.
need
But you
them.
see,
And
here's some banks, and a lot of them are Swiss. You'll notice there's a
they
shit Swiss
require
banks.
our life force in order to animate themselves.
because they're like memes that we've made them take that. Yeah, exactly. It's their corpses until we give them our life. We're the life for the corpse. Absolutely.
And but as you were saying, you mentioned banks, but you know the original Templars had banks, and they weren't part of this, right? There's still you can still do banking. There's still a function of banking if done correctly, right? Unfortunately, they've monopolized and controlled the 99.9% of the banks, but that's not to say that banking in and of itself, if done correctly, is necessarily evil, right? It serves a purpose. And you know, like you've got little credit unions here and stuff like we are part of that serve a community purpose here, right? Now, usury is usury good? Probably not, but it is interesting as you started this whole thing, the original Templars, they were doing banking to help protect people's assets.
Right. And they weren't even charging usury, which to me,
Yeah.
like, yeah, 13% or 7% compounding interest, where after 10 years it doubles. You know, if you loan $1 million over 7 years, it's $2 million. That's screwed. But like 2% interest, I think that's fair. You're screwed. I have money. Why should I give you my money unless I'm going to get something out of it and you need something out of it? I think like a limit on usury is fine personally. I don't see a
Yeah. Or
problem with,
service fees, you know, you're just doing commerce, you know, so what's the fair
yeah,
fee for that? And
or non-compounding. How about non-compounding interest? I'll loan you, $1 million. I want 7% of that, no matter how long it takes you to pay it back. Well, that would be fair,
Well,
right?
the one astute thing that Einstein did say when he was asked what he thought the most powerful thing in the universe was, and he calmly answered, compounding interest.
That's because he's one of them. He knew damn well.
okay,
But
Steve,
anyway, yeah.
let's
So these banks and shit. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to watch this. People are watching. I'll let you pause the screen and all that crap. So, um, I don't. How are we doing for time anyway? How long have we been going? A long
we're
time.
stretching it. We're over 2 hours,
Oh, that
so
yeah. Forget it. Yeah, like we won't even get into Ireland. I was gonna show. Yeah. Anyway, I've got more shit on the Jesuits, but I did want to. You were talking about the Scythians, Mike.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, okay, we're pushing 2 hours. I won't even go through the rest of this, but I'll just let this run. How about if you want to pause, you can look at it, right?
Well, is there any way we could share this on our show, the show link below, where people could download this and go
Well,
through
to
it?
be honest with you, I'm making a 7 hour movie called
Oh,
Apocalypse Infinity that's going to have all this shit plus more
perfect.
and more and more. So I
Awesome.
don't think we need to get into this, but if anyone wants to screenshot this, they can. Yeah. Um,
So, Steve, this has been brilliant, and I'm kind of feeling a part three coming on. Maybe we could just focus on the Irish origins. Really zone in on that for a part three.
yeah, I'll stop. Let me stop screen sharing. Hold on. Here we go. Did I stop?
Yep.
Okay, now I can put my I can join the band again because I don't need to read the highlights. Well, I was thinking the same, Bear. Like if we could get to Sarian, I've got a lot of stuff on the Irish. I think I know who these Scythians are and
Mhm.
the origins behind the Olympics and Greek mythology. It's like I've got a lot of good juice, but yeah, I think it'd be great. Somebody turned me on to these people called. You'll never get Anna Wilkes because she would be 200 right now if she was still alive. But I've been reading this book, Ireland, the of Chaldea, which is crazy good, this book. And then there's a guy called Bob Quinn and Anthony Woods who are apparently getting well into this Irish history, and I haven't read it yet.
Mhm.
I think they're
And last
newer
time we
authors.
mentioned Michael Tsarian, of course.
And him, yeah, yeah, yeah. So maybe we could get if these people are alive, I'll help you try to round them up. It could be really fun, actually, don't you think, to get some of these guys?
Yeah, I was on Michael's platform. He interviewed me maybe a year or so ago. I don't believe he's doing outside interviews anymore, but he's a wealth of information, and I'd encourage his Origins of Civilization, Irish Origins is a great read. 2 volumes, each one about 1 million pages.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, the thing, I don't know how to say this because it pisses off a lot of Christians and stuff, and Muslims and Jews. Because when you understand there are no chosen people, that these are allegories for alchemical and hermetical things going on, as you two are always talking about. Yeah, there's not, Jesus isn't coming back. He never walked. Like, this just pisses the hell out of most people. But to me, this knowledge is the most liberating because the control system we're in right now is all based on this superstition and misunderstanding. And I think if we knew the origins of this, um, maybe I don't know if we're too far gone, but if we knew what they did to hide and twist all this information into literal crap instead of metaphorical stuff, I do think the world would be, as Jordan Maxwell said, like, if you just bomb the Vatican tomorrow, the world would cry out and rejoice. I do believe that if we could understand this, I think we'd be heading in a totally different direction instead of bombing the shit out of each other and what's going on. And look what's going on in the Middle East right now. This is, as a human standpoint, this is appalling. It's disgusting. This is just we cannot let this happen. We can't.
Nope. And, the technologies exist right now to turn all this around. Biogeometry is making great inroads in understanding the life force, the omnipresent intelligence and life force that, is the universe, and how we can actually measure that energy and then bring that energy in and target the dead zones that have been created by all these technologies meant to enslave us, and literally reanimate our life with the creator's energy. So we have everything we need right now. That's why
Yeah.
both Mike and I like to keep bringing all of our conversations back to those things, even though it might seem a little woo-woo to some people. This is real science, and some of us have actually been
Yeah, I
practicing
got
it
I'm
and
trying them out. I got
experiencing
this
real results.
photonic wave machine, and I've got these photonic shields, and some company
Mhm.
sent me like 5 things in a thing. I talk into it, I guess, and then it tells me I'm weird and then sends a new resonance. But like, I've got these 5 new devices that they want me to sell, and I said, well, I won't try them, but I'll tell you what, I've been sleeping like a baby since I put these shields on all my smart meters and computer, and yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, like, there's a lot of stuff going on. That's why I love what you guys do. What your
Well,
channel
thank you.
does. Every time I watch one of your videos, I'm like, shit, man, I have to research like 20 hours to figure out what these guys are talking about right now.
Well,
And I think it's great
biogeometry is
that
a trip
there are
because
groups
it,
of human beings who are waking up toward this,
yeah.
which is what your platform's all about.
Mhm.
Do what do you think? Do we need everyone, or how's this gonna go? Do we need everyone to wake up, or is what's gonna happen here?
Critical mass doesn't take everybody. That only
I
takes a
can't hear you.
few that are tuned in intense enough, and that will shift the entire school of fish. And
So
for
you
those who will be left, because not everybody wants to go there.
Yeah, well, I've been saying that about the whole, thing that just happened in 2020. I'm kind of saying, like, maybe that was like they were giving you an option to get out of here, like a get out of jail free card.
Well,
If you don't want.
yeah, that's what the lethal injection's about. It's, do you want to stay here and be part of the show, or is it getting a little too sketchy for you? It takes some balls to play this game, and especially at this particular historical time, let alone be on the front lines. Because if the predator class has their way, each of us on the screen right now are going to be targeted and have bad
Yeah.
things happen to them. But some of us don't care because we know this isn't who we really are in the first place.
Yeah, I don't. I actually one of there's a lot I disagree with David Icke, but the three of us here, we resonate at a level where I don't think they're going to get us. And like you say, if they do, I don't care. I'm immortal, so I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But
Well,
my girlfriend would think otherwise.
I mean, that is the that's the meat of all of the allegory in the Bible and with Jesus and with everything the alchemists knew is we're immortal. That's really what all it comes down to. It's whether you understand that or whether you go into fear of death. And that's how they control the world, is fear of death.
Yeah, man, because when you're afraid to die, you won't fight back. When you don't give a shit, you're like, what are you going to do to me, man? Screw you.
Well, and it's not even not giving a crap. It's understanding that even though we are immortal, what you do here and what you decide and everything, action and thought actually has massive repercussions for your immortal self. So it's not like this hedonistic, oh, just do whatever you want. Who cares? I'm immortal. No, that's what the alchemists understood. That's why the science was literally a spiritual science, and why, alchemy was the all of chemistry. It was the spirit of chemistry, right? They understood that, no, like literally that's the most important thing, is how we think and how we relate to our higher self, because that's what will actually control the physical. And so, yeah, people can't understand all this stuff because they're coming from a pure materialistic point of view. When I say understand the stuff, like, what alchemy was. But I was reading our buddy, shout out to good old Steve Young, A Fool's Wisdom. Have you gotten this book yet, Bear? You'll really
No, I
enjoy
haven't.
it.
I
just
heard
a-
it's
Yeah, I'd love to see
freaking
it.
awesome. I've seen about 30 friends posting on Facebook saying it's awesome, man. I heard it's awesome.
I mean, it's really simple. It does a great job for anybody who has never done any research into alchemy and stuff. He breaks down all the false dichotomies and the false scientism, right, in the first half, and then he just goes into point by point what it all is, right, in terms of the true science. It's just a really
No, I
fun
got to see
read.
that.
Good work, Steve. We got to have you back on. I'd love to break down more of the scientism stuff because he's really good at that. So anyway, Steve, any things to end on today?
Well, no, it's been an amazing time as always. I hope I didn't get too boring in there with all the fucking timeline stuff, but I think it's
Not in
important.
the least.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but I think it's such a confusing subject. I hope shown a little bit of light saying, because people are like, what, how does this all work? Well, it works just like this. And it also works like an octopus in a ink storm, so that you can't figure out how it works. We can't figure out either. I've given you my best crack at it. If we knew how it worked exactly, they wouldn't be in power. We would have shut it down. This is what they do. They're masters of camouflage. They're chameleons, but they lose in the end. All that happens is they lose. So anyone who's going to stick around for the long haul, we do see a golden age very shortly. But I do think we maybe see harder times falling on us now. As we started to talk before we went on air, they can't grow crops in England right now. They've been manipulating the weather so much that it's been so wet that the English haven't put food in the ground, and neither have we here. And so the government said, "Oh, it's okay. We'll just pay you to subsidize your land, and if you don't plant for the next 4 years, and then make a food forest out of your land." And then you're like, "Yeah, but then what happens? What are you gonna throw like oak trees in my land, and then I can't plow it up again because I have roots like like." So I think
Maybe
as
not
Bob,
a good time to have money in the bank either.
yeah, I keep none, and I keep my bank at minus just because now I think you get penalized if you have positive, you get negative interest rate charge. You're like, you're going to charge me for having money in your bank? This is retarded.
Yeah.
So, I think as Bob Dylan's saying, a hard rain's going to fall, but I do think that a hard rain means a good harvest after, as you guys know where you live. So stick it
And
out.
that's the ultimate wake up call. As long as people can keep living in the illusion and be in denial, maybe it takes a little bit more of a harsher nudge to wake us up. And what we've been trying to do here for a few years now is tell people, maybe you should be growing some stuff and, doing certain things to prep. And, we're kind of at the 11th hour, not kind of, we are at the 11th hour, but there's still always time. And don't wait any longer, though, folks.
Plus, there's a whole parallel economy, parallel society that's been growing over the last, especially since COVID, that we're involved with. Alpha Vedic, we're doing quite well because we've already switched over a while ago. We left normie world a while ago. Yeah, we still deal in fiat dollars? Yes. And that's a whole other rabbit hole. But but that being said, like we do commerce through products that we grow ourselves and that we create, and we have conversations, you know, with people that are on that same level, and we support each other. And like Music in Sky is a alternative event where we come together, and you know, it's just, that's, I think, a wonderful solution, you know. And with Cordal, like what I've been working on forever, there's a whole other currency that's just waiting to be used. And so yeah, I think that whole parallel system makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah, we're going to see magic happen.
Yep.
And we're going to see the folks that are ready. It's going to bring out the best in all of us, because we're going to pull our energies together. And we can't create anew from what we've been experiencing, because it's not designed to do that. There's no mana, there's no life force. So yeah, this is a new reality. And if it necessitates a little bit of flexibility on our part, and to get out of our mental worry state, that's when the good stuff happens.
Yeah, and I mean, what you guys are doing is the greatest. I wish I could come to Music in Sky, but hopefully you'll invite me next year. I can't do it right now, but you know, yeah, I agree with you totally. Like, the thing is, we're all so excited. We're like, we want change now, 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 and it's not going to happen. Change is like a wave, you know. I think
hit up Alexac. He's coming out to Ireland to do to be at a festival.
When? Oh, I'll let him know.
Yeah, in August. They're doing great things out there. I still may go. I don't know. I'm going to be in Australia at a festival that Tom Barnett and their crew's doing. So these are popping up everywhere. And also we're looking to decentralize Music in Sky and have them all over the world. So yeah, man, it's just, it's happening now though, Steve. It is happening now.
It is. So, it's on. Game on. You know, yeah, game on.
Okay, guys. Well, hey, this has been a fantastic chat, as we knew it would be, Steve. Thanks for all your hard work, man. This is we're honored to have you on here to share this work. It really is answering a lot of the questions I've had for years. Like, who are these bloodlines? Like, who are, you know? So thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure. You're such an awesome person amazing. Too. Thanks for being you. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this chat. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, go give Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back. And we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Who do we have on? I think it's Kathy next week, if I'm right.
Kathy O'Brien?
Kathy O'Brien.
So we're going to get into MK Ultra.
Say hi for me. She's a hero of mine. Yeah.
Oh, she's awesome.
Firsthand about those bushes.
I don't even want to tell you what she's done with those bushes, but and I love you both of you. I love you as human beings and spirits and souls here. I wish I was a member of Alfa Vedic, but I don't have time. But if you invite me, I will be well, you're Batman and Robin, so I don't know. I guess I'm Batwoman. That don't make sense.
Door's always open for you if you want to come join us.
Who's the guy who answers the phone at Wayne Mansion?
Well, no, Alfred. we can be Justice.
I'm Alfred.
I was gonna say we can be Justice League, man. That's cool.
My favorite was a Comanche chief. Remember the guy say Electroc, and he would grow 50 feet tall. The Indian, he was the greatest. I'm Comanche chief.
That's great. Better than Cyborg.
Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. It was
love you a lot, Steve.
Thank you. Cheers.
Later, guys.